Let's be innovative. Let's challenge a norm. Let's raise the bar. Let's be the elite.
A new beginning, another opportunity to make a statement. Lionheart celebrates its roots with the car that started it all. 18 races to determine who is the best in the most exciting form of auto racing on the planet. 200-mile-per-hour Indy cars inches from disaster or glory. There can only be one Lionheart Speedway Series champion whose name will be etched into the Lionheart history books. The Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing starts now.
Each year, thousands upon thousands of people all come to this hallowed ground, a spot where tradition never stops, where at any moment, elation can turn into heartbreak, where odds-defining moments can turn drivers into legends, where competitors can turn into heroes or villains. This is not just a simple racetrack. This is Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and this is the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. Hello everyone and welcome to Race 10 of Season 2 for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing, live on racespottv and ESTV. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the luxury ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. My name's Justin Prince. Alongside me for 500 miles, 200 laps is Andrew Kinsella for today's coverage with Arjuna Kankipati in the producer's seat. Let's dive straight into our graphics esports countdown to green as we get ready to see who will make history today. An afternoon filled with excitement, ready to go from Speedway, Indiana, Andrew. It's been a wild first half of the season, but half two starts today.
It absolutely does, Justin, and what a place to start the second half of this season. But Indianapolis, the hallowed grounds of the IndyCar community, and this is going to be a treat that we're in for today, I think. It starts off an awesome second half of the schedule. We got New Hampshire, Chicagoland, Motegi coming up in the month of August, but we're going to have a little bit of break after this race here today. But really, all eyes focus here today on the 500 miles ahead of us, and it should be a very fun race here today.
Your schedule brought to you by Next Level Racing. As we get into the second half of the season, many of the favorites are up the top of the standings entering today. Matt Wagner and Matt Taylor, the battle of the Matts, separated by about 20 or so points entering today. Joe Branch, someone who wants to win here so badly, is in third. And don't forget about Trevor Malone and Mike Rigney, tied up in the top of the standings, presented by Graphics Esports. It's been a battle for your top competitors coming into today.
It absolutely has, and it's been two contrasting styles in your top five as well. Taylor, Wagner, and Malone, definitely more of the hard-charging types of drivers on this championship. But Branch and Rigney, they're more of the methodical type of driver that really sort of thinks their way through the races and tends to be there at the end of this race. So Branch and Rigney, I think their style really lends itself to 500 miles of action that we're going to see here today, and because it's going to be a survival test for all of these top five, and very, very important with the double points that they get a good result here.
That's going to be critical as well for the team standings, brought to you by HyperX. Team Race for Sunset, top of that grid currently, followed by Powerslide Motorsports, Dark Horse Racing, Synergy Motorsports Black, and Synergy Motorsports, the top five. Let's go straight into your rookie standings in turn, presented by Buttkicker, where Andrew Wood has been the top running rookie, but Samuel Ryman and Shane Coogan have been keeping up tightly at the top of those standings, Andrew.
Yeah, absolutely they have. They've not been letting Andrew Wood get away as we suspected that he might earlier in this season. Ryman and Coogan really keeping Wood honest, and in turn Wood has been succumbing to a little bit of the pressure here lately. He didn't have the best result last time out, and he really needs a good result here at Indianapolis to sort of reassert his dominance on these rookie standings, because not only Ryman and Coogan, but a number of drivers still within shouting distance of that top spot there.
With that, let's take a look at your series details presented by GSI, as it is Triple Crown race number 2 of 2022 today. Season 2 of the 8th year for Lionheart Racing Series competition, second season for the Speedway Series here at this one. Custom fixed setups with drivers competing for cash and prizes throughout the campaign of $6,930, $6,930 in that mark. And keep in mind, when it comes to this event as a whole, Andrew, the pressure has to be on for those looking to win those prizes and looking to come away with the hardware here today.
Absolutely, it's double points. It's the most important race on the season for an IndyCar driver, and just everything that you do in the season sort of builds up to this one moment here at Indianapolis, and then we've got a long, hard slog to Auto Club at the end of the season. So this really is the moment, especially in the summer stretch of IndyCar action here in the Speedway Series, that everyone's looking forward to and everyone wants to win.
Let's take a quick look at your event details presented by Moser Racing in turn, where, as it describes, there are some racers bigger than championships. This is one of those tracks and one of those races where your legacy can be built up here. In the last 4 races, for example, the driver that's led the most laps has converted that, though, to HyperX victory lane. An interesting statistic where the lowest a winner has started this past 12 months was 12. That was 12 months ago, of course. And if you remember back then, Barrett Rolfe won the inaugural running of the race under caution at the time, Andrew. How will this year fare is the question, especially knowing with this being the 7th time at the DW12 chassis here at this racetrack, anything can happen at the Brickyard.
Absolutely, anything can happen, and one of the things that you'll learn the more you drive Indianapolis is choose the winners as much as the winners earn it on the day of. You have to have not only the skill and the drive, but also the luck behind you, and that was Barrett Rolfe 1 year ago with that caution that came out at just the right time, and he was able to take home the win. But this track, as you can see on this track map here, It's 4 turns, but it's anything but simple here. The wind changes how you approach each turn. Each corner is slightly different, has its own slight character to it, like the bump through turn 2 that really presents a challenge to these drivers, and they have to do it 200 times over the next 500 miles.
It's 9.2 degrees of banking throughout the corners. These drivers will have a lot to consider. Qualifying is underway. In one of the major statistics entering today, 3 drivers have set the tempo qualifying-wise. The battle of the M's, as it can be described. Matt Taylor, Matt Wagner, Michael Goodman. 3 poles apiece entering today. And as you see on your left side of your screen, Michael Goodman has backed up the pace again at the top of the board today.
Yeah, absolutely he has, and this is going to be very important for Goodman. He's had a little bit of a run of bad luck here, some bad form going through the last few races, just getting caught up in incidents. So getting back on pole for this race here today is going to be very important, but we still have 24 seconds left. There might still be a last ditch attempt here.
Worth noting amongst your EOLs today, AJ Musselman, Will Gibson, as drivers get themselves situated and ready to go here. Hugo Gallez, Isaiah Dupree, the last of the drivers who will set times on circuit to close things out for qualifying. Are you ready to go racing for 500 miles at this 2.5-mile facility in Speedway, Indiana? We hope you are, as the drivers, they have completed their qualifying. It's time to get ready to go racing from the Brickyard. Drivers making their way to the starting grid for tonight's running of the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. From Speedway, Indiana, it's Michael Goodman on the pole for the 4th time this season. He'll start alongside Mike Rigney on the front row. Brian Beard and Andrew Wood, the top 4. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, quick in practice, will start in 5th with Big Joe Hassert in the 6th position. 7th spot goes to Paul Jenkins, one of his best qualifying runs of the season. Ron Hacker starts in 8th. Chris Fowler, coming off the top 3 last time out, will start in 9th, with Craig Forsyth inside the top 10. Jim Herrick and your points leader, Matt Taylor, the top 12. Freddie Carter and James Watson, 13th and 14th. 15th and 16th go to George Enzotto and Tony Shelwin. Jeff John and Isaiah Dupree start 17th and 18th, still within a 10th of the pole. The tight qualifying runs continue with a tie for 19th. Gonzalo Munoz gets the upper head over Dakota DeMay. Then, Gary Gonzo gets that 1/10 of the difference in 21st, with Hugo Gallez in 22nd. Scott Rankin rounds out the top 23, tied up with Trevor Malone on the pylon. 25th goes to Shane Coogan, with Christian Jasper 26th, Vern Hawkins and Joe Branch, your drivers who set qualifying times. The drivers towards the back today, Matt Wagner, Samuel Ryman, and the Gibsons. Will and Mike Gibson will start at the tail of the field today. And drivers continue to make their way to their cars before we get rolling for today's action. It should be an intriguing 500 miles to go racing here today, Andrew. Weather conditions pristine to go motorsports racing at the Brickyard. 111 degrees the track temperature Fahrenheit. It should be a fun one for our drivers today.
Yeah, absolutely. The weather is perfect here for racing at the Brickyard. And these drivers and these teams, this is what they've been building for the last week or so. They've been putting in the practice times. Now all that goes away. It's time to start up the engines. It's time to pull away. And now it's just you and the car and 200 laps around one of the most hallowed grounds in all of motorsports.
Let's take a look at your feature on boards for today. First up, Joe Branch. Sim racing is better with Buttkicker. Visit thebuttkicker.com. Your pole sitter for today has the SimRace 24/7 on board, Michael Goodman. Visit simrace247.com, where sim racing is for everyone. Chris Fowler has the next level racing on board. Take your racing to the next level. Visit nextlevelracing.com. And Matt Taylor has the HyperX on board. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers, and HyperX is always ready to game. That's a look top to bottom of your running order and your featured onboard cameras for today. 32 entrants of note. Matt Wagner did not make the start for today's running. He'll have to start from the pit lane. Also, Gary Gonzo will be starting from the pit lane today. Andrew, lots of action on hand. Your keys to be able to conquer this racetrack by the end of the 500 miles.
First things first, you have to be able to survive turn 1, lap 1. There's always calamity here. Everyone's so jacked up and ready to go. Secondly, you need to play the fuel strategy game and nail your strategy. And then third of all, you just need a little bit of luck. And sometimes, again, Indy can pick who gets lucky and who doesn't. So that's, for me, the 3 keys to this race.
All the drivers are set to go racing from Indianapolis Motor Speedway here on iRacing. Competition, commitment, excitement. This is Lionheart, and this is the start of the 2022 edition of the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. We're underway from Speedway, Indiana. For the race lead, Goodman losing the spot quickly with the swap draft to Mike Rigney coming into turn 3. The rest of the field keeping things calm and patient. Coming down to the final corner to start things off. Goodman looking to get the first lead lap of the event though. To the inside, gets the lead lap to start things off for 200 miles and 200 laps.
Yeah, really nice start there. Nice clean stuff, and everybody's starting to get sorted out into a nice order here. A little bit of battling there between, that's Joe Hassard and Luis Gonzalez Nunez, a little bit deeper in the field, but overall really clean stuff, and everybody did a good job settling in there and just finding their own running room. But it'll be interesting to see how long this lasts, because of course the tires will start to go away here, Justin, and some drivers, especially like the likes of Chris Fowler, you see him taking it too wide here. They'll start to get a little bit antsy trying to get their way through this field here.
Fowler, one of the more aggressive drivers we've seen throughout the years, keeping things patient though. Trying to figure things out with Ron Hacker. Behind them, Craig Forsyth trying to make moves. Of note, Goodman is in the lead and trouble behind him. Jenkins collecting several other competitors. More slamming cars into the outside. Christian Jasper riding the safer barrier. Munoz involved, and we're under caution for the first time already.
Oh, and we got some drivers collected back in the field from that incident. It was Craig Forsyth and Paul Jenkins on the exit of turn 1. Forsyth just went up the track ever so slightly in the dirty air of Chris Fowler, and then collected Paul Jenkins there, and then Fowler sitting in the middle of the track. It looks like maybe that might have been Munoz and Shawan as well. And I'm not sure. I think that was Christian Jasper as well. So that was definitely really unfortunate for all of those drivers involved, because the 3 drivers, especially in the back, just had nowhere to go. Here, again, we're watching Forsyth, and he just gets a little bit of dirty air. He came in really shallow into that turn 1, pushes up the track. There's a little bit of air between the two of them, and then they spin down the track, and unfortunately Forsyth back up the track. He saves it from hitting the wall, but back up into the traffic and leaves Jasper and Munoz and all of those guys nowhere to go there.
Some hard licks in the midst of that, and that ends a few drivers' days already. A couple laps into the event. On lap 3 already, Jasper, Forsyth, Munoz with toes. After what was an eventful incident just moments ago. Keep in mind, Matt Wagner, we mentioned him missing the start. He lost a lap just prior to that incident too, Andrew. He is on track, but he's 1 lap down to the rest of the field in the 3 car.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate for Matt Wagner there, the Dark Horse Racing driver. He just... I'm not sure the reason that he missed the start, but when you do that, you have to make sure that you can get back before the leader gets through there, and he wasn't able to do that. So this is going to put a real damper. He's going to have to basically go off strategy at some point here and find a way to get himself cycled through the field the hard way. So it's going to be a very difficult race for Matt Wagner.
Amongst those who peeled off in the pit lane in front of him, DeMade, Rankin, Branch, Coogan, Hawkins III, Mike and Will Gibson, Paul Jenkins, all coming in for service during this caution period. Let's take the time to talk about the fuel windows here today, because as we've seen and talked about with IndyCar competition, 28 to 29 laps in clean air. How does that fuel mileage break down today, though, for the Dallara DW12?
Yeah, it really does get affected by the draft around here, Justin, especially when you get further back in the pack. You can really save a lot of fuel. So, as you say, 28, 29 laps, but you can go 33, 34, as we saw Alexis Newsom do in the IR18 as well. You can really save a lot of fuel, especially lifting in turns 1 and 3 at the end of these long straightaways. And getting that fuel strategy right is going to be very, very important, because with the 200 laps and with the distance that we have, if you're able to cut off a fuel stop in this race, you're going to have a major advantage over your competitors.
And we were talking about this as well. The cars, similar to last year, keep in mind, Andrew, as you are the setup builder for this event and throughout the Lionheart's competitions. Talk us through the differences, because as you discussed, there is a little bit more downforce this year compared to last year, but not too major of a difference.
Yeah, we've given them a little bit of downforce, and it has basically just allowed the drivers to stay a little bit closer together than we saw last year. They were getting a little bit spread out, and the other thing that we did is we changed the suspension just a little bit, allowing the car to rotate through the center of the corner more. But it also means that these drivers will have to pay attention to how the tires are wearing out over the course of the run, because where you are on track in terms of aero wash and that sort of thing will affect things. And then it'll also be important that you're going to have to drive the car. If you're the leader, you're really going to have to keep the tires under you and make sure that you're not getting too loose as the run goes on.
Pit stops continue as drivers get ready for the restart. Godso amongst those overrunning the pit stalls here and getting things topped off. Will Gibson as well. Mike Gibson, Samuel Ryman topping off as well. So that can make things intriguing compared to, remember with IndyCar, it went green flag to checkered in what was a historic race where that fuel saving was important. And that's been a trend in some of the major events, not in Lionheart per se, because Retro did have cautions, where these races, if you have the right amount of cautiousness, can go green and become a mileage race.
It absolutely can. And just because we've had one caution so far here doesn't mean that the mileage race is any less off the table at this point, because you have so much time remaining that there's still a lot that you can do in terms of strategy in the car over the course of the rest of this race.
First, those who pit for reference, 19th Dakota DeMay. Joe Branch has gained 8 spots from that trouble we've seen on the start. Paul Jenkins is still going in 23rd. But Michael Goodman is the race leader coming up to the restart. Rigney, Beard, Wood, Joe Hasser, your top 5. Nunez shuffled back to 6th prior to the caution. Amongst your biggest movers, Branch +8, +6, Trevor Malone. All set to go. Green flag is out, back underway. And Taylor checking a bit to the left side there for a split second as he tries to build up a run behind Fowler. Nice and clean for the most part amongst your front runners. But was going to say, an interesting poke out from Taylor. We've seen it a bit in practice as well, too, in the final practice restarts. For this situation, Taylor seemed to prefer going to the left. Meanwhile, for the race lead, Rigney's going to the inside, to the left of the racetrack to take the point. Beard not able to get on by Goodman for second.
I think what you saw there from Taylor is that one of the things that can happen particularly early on with so many cars on track is you can get checkups very easily here, because you do have this straight run to the green flag, and it's very difficult to try and anticipate when the drivers in front are going. So by going down to that inside lane, what Taylor's doing is just getting a clear picture of what's going on and avoiding any potential checkup that happens. The trick there is that, of course, you cannot pass to the inside before the start-finish line. So he has to be very, very careful to not get too good a start there and get too big of a jump and then get a black flag.
It's going to be very important to make sure to keep an eye on throughout this one. A little bit of snakiness coming through the short shoot through 3 and 4. That's the 11th on backpack. Brandon Carter leading the group. Georgian Zotto amongst those with close calls. Isaiah Dupree losing ground down the straight. These drivers were trying to practice very fiercely in terms of their driving as to the inside. goes Tony Shelman to move up a spot.
And you can tell that some of these drivers are desperate to try and get around some of the drivers in front. Creighton Carter's got a really big gap in front of him, and that's sort of what's allowing this pack to form up right behind him. Is he's losing the draft of that top 10 in Jim Herrick in front of him. So it looks like Schowen is getting really desperate to try and lead this pack back up to that top 10.
Yeah, especially with the amount of fighting we've seen. That can be critical. Last time by, Tony Shelman 3/10 quicker than the cars in front. Will the swap draft come into play? No. Carter elects to be patient. They try to regroup and gain back up to the 40 car. So a nice clean run, a little bit of bubbling though coming out of that pack. The lead group still keeping it nice and steady though. Inside of the swap draft up at the front. You see that snaking and see that swapping really popping up though for some, including Matt Taylor and Chris Fowler, the teammate swapping.
Yeah, and this is where having a teammate around you can really pay dividends. But what you're seeing there is very interesting from Fowler, because he was right buried up behind Matt Taylor's rear wing there. And generally speaking, when you're swap drafting, you really want to sort of drop back through the corner through turns 2 and 4 to really allow yourself to get a good run down the straightaways. Otherwise, you're only a mile or two an hour quicker than the car in front of you. Sort of like what Taylor did there. He dipped out to the outside through turn 2. That's going to allow him to draft on the back of Chris Fowler down into turn 3 here and really allow him to get a good mile an hour difference. And that's sort of the faster way to swap compared to what Taylor did the last lap and what Taylor's doing this lap, which is sort of burying himself under the rear wing of Matt Taylor.
And the more they mistime it, the more they might lose ground, in fact. To Ron Hacker, who is the next car up the road. Jim Herrick just watching the popcorn seat. But you know what? The more they fight and swap the way they are too here, the more this also allows Tony Schowen to come back in. They're only 15 car lengths nearly right behind you see in the backdrop.
Yeah, so Tony Schowen is going to be cheering on them to sort of fall back a little bit here. And meanwhile, we've got the leading group of now 7 is starting to just eke out just that little bit of an advantage over the trio behind. And right now, Goodman and Rigney are doing a real good job of leading this group and doing some nice swapping of their own up front.
So far, Goodman 8 laps, Rigney 4 so far. They try and settle things in amongst this early portion of the run. Behind them, some shuffling. Tony Schowen feeling a bit of pressure for a moment from George Anzaldo. Now Anzaldo has Creighton Carter looking to get a charge back on the 6 machine, possibly. No, a left back from Carter.
And you can see that Anzaldo is definitely on the move here. He's moved up several positions over the course of this run already, and he is definitely one of the drivers I think who's very hungry to get a good result in this campaign, because he's really shown some good speed so far this season, but he hasn't really had the results to back it up. And there's no bigger race than the Indy 500 here, so this is definitely one that Anzaldo has had circled to do well in for a while now.
Absolutely. Carter a little bit higher up on the racetrack with a major slowdown coming down the straight. Losing ground now to James Watson, who looks to have one of his best runs of the season. What could be a game changer of a race. It's not been a pretty run for the 93 this season. The 93 not able to take advantage of the near contact for Carter to the wall.
And you're starting to see the aero push creep into these guys now. And as we see Matt Wagner, who again, 1 lap down, so he's trying to fight his way through these drivers just to get back onto the lead lap after that unfortunate missed start that he had. But you can see that the aero push is starting to affect these drivers, especially further on back in the pack, just that little bit more. And it's going to be really important. It shifts very much into the driver's hands for the rest of the stint to try and find a way to maximize the speed, but not put yourself in danger of getting that aero wash into that outside wall there.
And don't forget, when it comes to this chassis, compared to what we've seen for IndyCar competition earlier this year for 500 miles, no in-car tools. Meaning it's all about your feet and your hands in terms of how you drive this track. Goodman back to the race lead meanwhile. Keep in mind, Woods up to 3rd amongst all this shuffling. Here's the look from Goodman. You see the swap draft continuing to play prevalence amongst your top 2.
Yeah, and one of the benefits of being in that leading duo is if you're in front, you really have that clean air, so it allows you to maximize your corners and really take as much as you possibly can through turns 2 and 4, which again creates that separation that we were talking about earlier. When you're back further in the pack, even though you don't really have the draft, there is these remnants of that slipstream coming back towards you, and it does give you just that little bit of dirty air, and it doesn't allow you to really maximize the corners like you do if you're in the number 1 position like Mike Rigney is right now.
Rigney this time has built up a decent buffer over Goodman, keep in mind, so some of that tire fall off might be coming in. They are about halfway through the fuel run so far in this one. See if there ends up being another swap back this time about this pack 10 cars deep. It's worth noting in pack 2 that there has been a breakup. Tony Schowen has ditched the rest of his pack, in part because side-by-side battling has ensued with Wagner and Zaldo, who now have very similar looking paint schemes starting this week.
Yeah,
and more trouble, Carter. Carter up near and leans the wall again.
Yeah, he's been flirting with disaster lap after lap, and sooner or later it's going to come back to bite him. And if I was Trevor Malone right behind him, I'd be a little bit nervous. James Watson, you can see getting around him there. But Carter, he needs to find a way to maximize turn 2 a lot better than he's doing right now, because he's really flirting with disaster at this point.
Here's a look at what Carter had, and keep in mind, air wash huge. That time a major lift, and that opened the door right up for Watson. He had an even bigger lift, remember, the first time he did this.
Yeah, and one of the things that Carter will learn fairly quickly here is that with these long straightaways, you really need to maximize your straight line speed, and having to lift right before you get on the straightaway, that's a sure way to destroy any straight line speed that you have. So it's better to take that lift early in the corner and power your way out on exit than it is to do what Carter was doing there and just be lifting right on the exit in order to avoid getting into the wall, because it just kills your straight line speed throughout the entire rest of your lap, basically.
Let's take a look at your driver profile presented by Moser Racing for today. It's Trevor Malone, who is continuing to have a strong run so far, 27 starts. Still looking for the first victory, though. He's been close a few times, including 2 second-place finishes. He's first started, remember, at the season opener at Twin Ring Motegi with 13 top 10s, 7 top 5s, and a pole. To his credit, when it comes to Trevor Malone, he's 15th, currently running in Pack 2, trying to catch up to the leaders.
Yeah, he's sort of buried in this pack right now, and I think that he's doing the smart thing right now, Justin, and just sort of cruising along here. It's still very early in this race. We've barely gone a tenth of the way through the total race distance at this point, so Malone's got lots and lots of time. I've been in this position a number of times, and the best thing to do is just do exactly what he's doing right now. Just be calm and allow the race to sort of come to him a little bit here.
Watson, we talked about him trying to show some improvement. It's been a wild start to the year in some circumstances when it comes to this yellow, green, and pink machine. Watson 30th in the points entering today. His best finish, though, came last time out at Nashville, specifically 15th. 131 laps turned at that race. Had a solid finish in that one compared to some of the bad luck for the 93 this year.
Yeah, so far the color scheme has matched the temperament in terms of the race results that Watson has been able to pull through, but he is another driver that has shown moments of speed. He just needs to sort of understand more a little bit on the racecraft side of things, when to make the moves, when to sort of lean back a little bit. He was getting very close to the back of George Anzaldo there the last time through turn 1, and it checked him up and sort of allowed Creighton Carter to get back into him. So really timing your moves and knowing when to be aggressive, when to be patient is going to be very important for him as he goes towards the second half of the season.
Mine, also a fellow sim racing broadcaster in the community, also has won multiple championships, but not necessarily in open wheel competition. His background, remember, is dirt racing. By the way, See how things are faring out up front. Mike Rigney is trying to check out. He's keeping the gap even with Goodman to 0.7 of a second. Andrew Wood wants to keep up, jumps up to second with the draft.
And you're really seeing that those tires are starting to make a difference here for Mike Rigney. It's allowing him to really break the draft. The drivers in second just aren't able to really stay with him at this point, and he's right on that cusp of breaking the draft to Andrew Wood. Wood still got a sniff of it here, but he's really got to nail a few corners here to drag this group back up towards where Mike Rigney is. But the one thing about that, Justin, is that Mike Rigney is going to have a lot of clean air in front of him, and that means that he's not going to get a very good fuel mileage here for the remainder of this stint. And that's important because these drivers don't have any fuel maps that they can cycle through like you do in the IR18. With this, any fuel saving is all down to draft and throttle control, and Mike Rigney basically now is going to be flat out for the rest of this stint.
Going to be very important to make sure you keep those in mind, absolutely. Tony Shalwin, I talked about this a little bit earlier. He drove by himself here to the lead pack. Yes, you heard that right. He drove himself without any draft to the rest of this pack.
Yeah, Shalwin is one of those drivers. He's got thousands and thousands of miles of experience here at Indianapolis. He knows the lines that you need to drive, particularly in this DW12 chassis that can really sort of maximize your dirty air running, and that's allowed him to draft back up onto this leading pack, and he's brought Matt Wagner with him as well. Wagner just a few tenths behind him, even though he is a full lap down once again, but great drive there from Shalwin, and that's really put him in a good spot coming into this first round of pit stops that we're expecting probably in the next 3 to 8 laps here.
And don't forget, some drivers had topped off during the previous caution. Vern Hawkins III is the first of those in 17th, 7 seconds back. Then there's a bumper to Joe Brandt, Shane Coogan, Scott Rankin, Dakota DeMate are all amongst those in drafting packs who have a chance to go another 5 or so laps further. Keep in mind, some of them have also been very aggressive in some of their passing attempts have not worked out. Dupree, for example, you see, trying to use the top line as a ramp.
Yeah, and of course that is assuming that we do get a full round of green flag pit stops under our belt here, because some of these drivers back in the pack, they're getting a little bit sketchy here. We saw Creighton Carter earlier getting very close to the wall, and Isaiah Dupree just a little bit ago there as well. And you can see that some of the drivers on those fresher tires, they're starting to get a little bit antsy here, because I don't think that they've gone as far up the field as they were wanting. Look at how close they were.
They touch! They touch! Hawkins III holds on to it. We stay green as Creighton Carter and Hawkins III both scrape tires.
Wow, you don't get much closer to wrecking out of turn 1 than that there, Justin. That was really, really dicey stuff from both drivers. Fortunately, we were able to get through that unscathed, but that was definitely a heart and mouth moment for both drivers, and even for myself watching there, it was very, very close to some disaster there.
Still amongst those looking to shuffle about still is Joe Branch. See him still stuck back here, 9 positions gained in the race. Amongst those second on his strategy.
Yeah, and then, so just to cap off the top, talk about the different strategies. One thing to keep in mind here with Indianapolis is you are able to basically get in a stop here without going a lap down. So it is going to be a little bit less important to be staying out longer on this run, where the length of your stint comes into play for those drivers who stop basically 5 or 6 laps into this race, is that come the end of the race, you don't have to do quite as much fuel saving to potentially cut out a stop. So that's where the advantage is going to be, not necessarily on the pit cycle itself, but overall over the course of the race, that's where your strategy is going to play out.
Big math, absolutely. See from the side, Andrew Wood within 4/10 nearly to your race leader now. So that gap has shrunk down with the help a bit of the draft. Waiting to see if anyone peels in with 170 laps to go. This is the start of the expected window. Remember, we had 3 laps of pacing Allowed some drivers to potentially save a little bit. Goodman has held on to third throttle. This Beard and Big Joe Hassert still the top 5 in this respective pack here. And remember, it was Goodman and Rigney who spent a majority of the run swap drafting. Rigney spent the past 5 or 7 laps with a major lead that's now been shrunk down to about 0.2 of a second.
Yeah, Andrew Wood has done a really good job hunting Rigney down, because you'll notice that Goodman hasn't really made the same type of progress as Andrew Wood as Rigney comes down. So that's 31 laps for both Rigney and Goodman as well.
So the 2 drivers who led a majority of the laps early on into the pit lane for their first scheduled stops. Tony Schowen, who charged hard to get to the main pack, has also peeled on in, also joining them. This time around is Paul Jenkins. So pit window is open. Trevor Malone is indicated amongst those coming in this next time around. Keep an eye to see who peels on in. George Anzotto, who's lost the draft, coming in. Ron Hacker from the main pack, also wanting to come in this upcoming time by.
And this is going to be very important as you're in and out laps. As you can see, Goodman gained a lot of time on that pit in. He's right up close to Mike Rigney, and he's going to be right in Rigney's draft, where he was almost a full second back when he was entering the pits. Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, Chris Fowler, Ron Hacker, George Anzaldo, all coming down pit lane. Pit road's getting busy. And the interesting part here, Justin, is we're only on lap 33 now, so we're right on the edge of that window in terms of being able to make it on one less stop. So some of these drivers who are staying out, like Hassert, like Taylor, they're in a much better position here going forwards.
Well, pit stop's expected. Chris Fowler struggling to get into the pit box, just now got into the stall as the rest of his competitors got on the jacks. Wood coming in this time around, though. How does he handle the entry? A little bit safer compared to Beard, who tries to launch it on into the lane. Bit more smoke and a spin behind him nearly. Jim Herrick with a save right in front of the 3-car of Matt Wagner.
Yeah, that was a massive save there from Herrick. It could have been a disaster for both himself and Wagner, but looking back at the front, it is Goodman and Rigney and Luis Gonzalez-Nunez have sort of formed a trio here on track, and the interesting thing will be what will happen to Andrew Wood and Joe Hassert in relation to these 3 drivers here.
Brian Beard also having issues in the pit stalls, just now completed the service. Swap draft in effect for Goodman and Rigney again. Meanwhile, the race off the lane, most of the gaggle of cars is in turn 1. Andrew Wood is in turn 2. Did Andrew Wood have a stellar pit stop enough to jump ahead of them? Yes, indeed. Andrew Wood comes out in what could be the race lead, but how long will that last with the draft coming up quickly?
Yeah, so the important thing is the differential right here, and Rigney is right on the cusp of getting the draft for Andrew Wood, but crucially, it's these 4 that have really broken away from the rest of the leading pack, and it is Tony Schowen who has made it all the way up to what will be 5th position on the road once the full pit cycle has been completed. But Tony Schowen has gotten far up this order through the undercut here, and he's battling it out with Joe Hassert for what will be 5th position.
Some of the drivers indicating those who went under the cautions coming in. Here is a look at a disaster for Chris Fowler, and this took him 8 seconds to get back in the box. This is still not in the box. This is still not in the box.
You can see that not only did he slide through the box, but he was also just too far to the left, so it did not allow him to take the service, and it forced him to back up several times. So that is just a disaster for Chris Fowler. He is going to be seeing some red here, which means that, as we know, this is going to be a very aggressive drive from here on out for Chris Fowler.
Here's a look at what happened with the 40 of Jim Herrick. And he nearly hits the back end of the 8 of Taylor in this.
And that's just trying to maximize everything that you possibly can, because as we've talked about, there's so much to be gained by really maximizing your pit in. You can gain whole seconds just by getting right to that line if possible, in terms of how fast you're going right at the timing line. So I think Herrick was just trying to take every foot that he could there, and he nearly made a big mistake, but fortunately seems like we've gotten away with it.
Joe Branch, the furthest out of everybody, stretching the fuel tanks, has gone on in just now 33 laps on the stint, but 37 laps into the race, which in turn will likely cycle, depending on how things play out over the next few moments. Wood back up to the point. Goodman, Rigney, Nunez, the leading group. 4 cars have broken away by 3 seconds. Joe Branch just now completing the stop, but these drivers likely zipping on by him. Yes, indeed they will, to take the race lead as Wood.
Yeah, for Joe Branch, it's all about the fuel mileage now. He made it to the end of lap 37, which is just huge in terms of being able to go the rest of the way on one less stop. And if that is the case, then he's really positioned himself well. But the issue is that in doing so, he's put himself very far back from your race lead, almost 15 seconds by my timing right now. So that is going to be very important that he comes out here, gets back after it, and gets back to fuel saving, because without a caution, he is going to have to win this solely on that fuel mileage gamble.
Just cycled into the battle for about 12th position, led by Trevor Malone currently. Dakota DeMade has had to come back in for a wing change, an extra pit stop for the 82. So DeMade's race not going well. Still looking, though, at that charging 93. It's dropped back to 17th, though. Behind them and around them, battling continues side by side, flaring up the road, Carter and Coogan.
And Carter is sticking to that really high line through turn 2, and time after time we just see it just not allowing him to maximize his way down these straightaways, maximize his top speed. And Coogan really wants to get around in here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he was one of the drivers that was on that alternate strategy. Is that correct? Yes.
That's correct.
So he is working on trying to get as far up as he possibly can at this point.
Absolutely. And there had been a spin at the end of the pit road, wondering if that may have involved DeMade in that sequence. We talked about the extra pit stop after missing the stall. Did not in that case. DeMade did have to come back down to the access road in that situation. Meanwhile, the race leaders, Wood is still keeping a decent buffer over Goodman, Rigney, and Nunez here. 8/10 still the gap. Intriguing for Wood, who is maintaining speed here with the rest of the top 4.
Yeah, he's just been consistently keeping that gap. And one of the things with the DW12 is it does sort of just create almost this bubble effect that happens with the draft. Is if you just get a little bit outside of the draft, you almost need something for the car in front to happen in order to break through and get to that sort of 0.7, 0.6 area. And once you do that, you can really draft up onto the back of the car in front. But until that happens, it's very, very difficult, especially when the driver has clean air and is able to maximize their turns.
Or what you see at the head of this pack, how big one mistake in a pit stop, Andrew, can be, because Chris Fowler, remember, was in the midst for the race leaders. Now he's trying to lead the Snake for 12th. That's a big difference compared to where he was running inside the top 6 before. And that's setting up battles, too, keep in mind, with Malone wanting to charge into Coogan still.
Yeah, and Coogan is continuing to be on the march here. He's gotten around Creighton Carter, and now he's around Trevor Malone as well, so Coogan's really showing some good speed here in this second stint. But it's interesting that Fowler is snaking the way he does, because while that will break the draft of the cars behind you, it is slightly slower because you're going a longer distance and you are basically creating more friction with the track by turning your tires. So it is the slower way down the straightaway. So it's definitely not helping this pack when he snakes like that to make any sort of dent on on getting onto the back of George Anzaldo in front of them.
Keep in mind, when it comes to the case of Coogan, we talked about the rookie standings and how things have played out. Coogan, for parts of the season, has been in the championship conversation. He did win his last start at Michigan, remember, which was an absolute thrower. 12 laps at Michigan to close things out in what was a wild finish, to say the very least, in the Irish Hills of Michigan.
Yeah, absolutely. Shane Coogan is one of the drivers on the rise in this series, and it doesn't surprise me that he's showing some speed here in the early going. And then definitely his result at Michigan shows that he also knows how to finish the race, so he's definitely a driver to keep your eye on as this race goes on, especially if he can make this alternate fuel strategy work and continue to give him a little bit of an advantage through these pit cycles.
You see the alternate strategies, some of those driving around and battling around. Jeff Gion on 12-lap old tires, 7 laps for Joe Branch. Nowhere for Branch to go quite yet. And remember, we talked about the big picture being the big case for the Bumblebee-looking machine. It's going to be important to make sure, though, at the same time, you have to keep in mind he doesn't lose too much time in some of these battle packs, you'd have to think.
Absolutely. It's an important balance you have to strike when you know that you're faster than the driver in front of you, but at the same time, it can sometimes be the case that you actually lose more time by battling with that driver than you do just by sitting behind, and particularly if you're Joe Branch, where fuel economy is going to be so important for him going forward. It wouldn't surprise me, Justin, that he just sort of backs off here for the next few laps. Having said that, though, he is now around Jeff Xiong there, and looking on to get onto the back of Vern Hawkins now.
Into the pit lane, Paul Jenkins. 14 laps into the run, so an intriguing situation for the 35 car. Remember, was involved in the first caution. Jenkins slow rolling into the pit lane after the early troubles, was running in the 20s prior to the decision. Looking towards how those drivers up front are running. Wood has broken the draft. Goodman has nearly broken the draft from Rigney.
So it's very interesting to see Mike Rigney starting to struggle here in this second stint after he looked so dominant during that first opening run. But the story here, I think, is just how strong Andrew Wood has been so far in this race. He's really shown a lot of pace. The question is, are all of these drivers making the right choice in terms of fuel economy? Because running on your own like they are, you just cannot make a fuel number good enough to make that stretch work. And we see with the likes of Joe Branch going as far as he did, they have to be considering that this might not be the best play even this early on in the race.
Indeed. Rigney has just about officially lost that draft. For reference, you see on the pylon about that 1 second gap. Tony Schowen is leading pack 2, keep in mind. Over Joe Hassert, Matt Taylor, Brian Beard, Ron Hacker, Jim Herrick are all in this grouping. So Tony Schowen, up 11 spots, is tied for your biggest mover with Shane Coogan.
Yeah, Schowen has definitely been on a mission to lead these packs and to try and find ways to get back into the draft of the cars in front. And so far, he's been doing a really good job on this second stint, just mitigating the damage being done to this second pack. And if anything, he's closed up just a little bit onto the back of Luis Gonzalez Nunez, now only about 2.5 seconds, where when they came out of the pits, it was closer to 3 seconds. So definitely, if I were this pack, I'd be very content to just let Schowen lead, because he definitely seems to have a fast car under him today.
But coming up to lap 50 in this one. Starting up lap 50, in fact, this time around. Wood leading by 1.1 seconds. And I will say this with Wood. We talked about this before. His rookie campaign in the series, plenty of experience, especially here in the past, Andrew. That experience definitely coming to play, you have to think, for the 64.
Yeah, absolutely. Wood, one of the more experienced drivers in the IndyCar community. He really came onto the scene sort of on the tail end of the DW12 time on iRacing and has sort of flourished in the IR18 time frame, but he's definitely no stranger to this car, no stranger to the service, and no stranger to Indianapolis either. He knows how to get around here, and he's showing it today.
Andrew Wood, your race leader for today's running of the Next Level Racing Indy 500, presented by SimRace 24/7 on RaceSpot ESTV. More coverage from Indianapolis Motor Speedway coming up after these messages here from the Brickyard.
With the Buttkicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Buttkicker. The future is feeling.
Welcome back to iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway for more coverage of the next little racing Indy 500 for the Lionheart Speedway Series presented by Moser Racing, where Andrew Wood is your race leader over Michael Goodman, Mike Rigney, Luis Gonzalez Nunez, and Tony Schowen. Justin Prince, Andrew Kinsella with you, Arjuna Kakapati in the producer's seat as we make our way into quarter two of tonight's action. So far, we've had multiple different players. Rigney started off strong. Goodman started off strong. But Wood has become extremely strong when it comes to his throw power and when it comes to his speed, leading by 1.4 seconds over the rest of the pack, running away and pulling away.
Yeah, Wood has stamped his authority on this second segment of the race. After the first round of pit stops, he was well out in front, and he is just driving away. Michael Goodman, the closest driver to trying to stay with him, but Mike Rigney and Luis Gonzalez Nunez, they're just not able to stay with him now, almost 3 to 3.5 seconds behind the 64 of Andrew Wood. He is really stamping his authority on this portion of the race.
Wood keeping it nice and clean in the midst of all this. You mentioned Goodman there too. Keep in mind when it comes to Michael Goodman, coming off his 4th pole of the season in that trailing position right now. His best finish as the pole sitter, keep in mind, a 15th at what is now Old Atlanta Motor Speedway on the platform. His other 2 pole positions prior to today, DNFs. And keep in mind, this is a track where curses can come into play.
Yeah, Goodman has not. Goodman starting on the pole has not portended well for his finishing results, but so far so good, at least for the first quarter of this race for Michael Goodman. He's done exactly what he's needed to do. He's staying with Andrew Wood right now for the most part, and it's going to position him well if things continue to go this way. The thing with Michael Goodman is that he's made some small mistakes in each of these races, and he really needs to have a mistake-free race here today. And as we know, Justin, 200 laps around Indianapolis is a long time to go mistake-free.
Especially with how much you need to hit your marks, 41 seconds a lap currently. Alonso's with a quiet run today. Matt Taylor was expected to be one of the favorites today. He's still in just 7th, a +5, yes. But for Taylor, expected big things from the 8 car as the points leader.
Yeah, and I think that this is the case of Matt Taylor just sort of letting the race come to him. He knows that there's still a long way to go. We still have 3/4 of the race basically still to go. So he's just sort of sitting and cruising. The trick that you need to do with that is you need to make sure that you're not letting the leader escape too much here. because he's now almost 7.5 seconds behind Andrew Wood, and that's going to be a lot to try to make up without a caution. And normally you'd expect some cautions to come out in this race, but Justin, we saw less than a month ago, the IndyCar series went green from green to checkered, so you never know when a caution will or won't come out around Indianapolis.
Just following along with Brian Beard for reference, and keep in mind, Beard has been improving over the past few weeks. Oh, trouble! Big crash in the heart of the pack. Watson just gets through. Carter spins it around. Debris amongst those upside down. We're under caution.
Well, I will take full credit for that commentator's curse in terms of bringing out a caution there. So that was Creighton Carter. We saw him getting high a number of times through turn 2. This time it was through turn 1, and the driver below him just nowhere to go there. Yeah, Scott Rankin nowhere to go, and James Watson just barely snuck through between the two of them there.
Watson had to slide it into the cones to avoid trouble. Let's take a look at this.
Yeah, it was just too high. He kept in the throttle trying to drive the car through the push, but it just brushed that outside wall. As soon as he hit the outside wall, it basically spun him straight down across Rankin. Just an innocent bystander there. And then watch this onboard from James Watson. You can see the car getting up on its side. Oh, he just barely splits the difference, and then nice escape onto the road course access road there. Now, you have to be very careful when you rejoin because it's very bumpy through there. Watson does a really good job. He should have avoided any sort of damage from that. So really nice driving there from James Watson.
Just as the pit window was about to open, too, with the time of the caution flag. So into the pit lane goes Wood and everybody else likely to follow suit.
Yeah, but crucially, Justin, one driver who might be benefiting from this, Matt Wagner, should be staying out here, and he might just be able to get a lap back, even if it is only temporary. It could be massive for him to put himself back in a better position here.
It's a tight rope, though, as Samuel Ryman stays out as well in the midst of things, trying to get a lead lap possibly. Dakota DeMate also staying out on track. Pit stops underway. Goodman has jumped out of the car. Goodman is out of the car. What is going on with the 99? As Wood off and away, Goodman still is out of the car.
Something has gone disastrously wrong here for Michael Goodman. No explanation for what happened unless there was some sort of hardware failure while Goodman was on pit lane. If that is the case, the one benefit for Goodman is he is under caution here, so he does have a little bit of time to fix it, but that's just disastrous for the number 99.
He is now out of the race after running in second, so that changes a lot. Nunez is now up to second net. Rickney Taylor Hassert now amongst your top 5, depending on what Samuel Ryman does. Keep in mind, Ryman is supposed to come in and pit.
Yeah, I suspect Ryman is just staying out here to lead a lap, but the other story to talk about here, Justin, is that does sort of ruin the race for, ruin the strategy for Joe Branch as well, because it now puts him right back on pace with the leaders. So now he's going to have to, instead of relying on pit strategy, he's going to have to drive his way through this field.
So you see the strategy coming in, and as expected, Wagner, hoping that there's a quickie yellow here, has to come in the next couple laps when it comes to the fuel mileage. Ryman rolls into the stalls. Wave around now for the 3. As well, Dakota DeMate is on the same call, but has a few more laps he can go further than the 3 car. So it's Wood, Nunez, Rigney, Taylor, Hassert, now the top 5. And now how do you play this if you're Andrew Wood? Because expecting the swap draft to come in again, Andrew, but some of these drivers may be hungry to get their first lead laps of this event.
Yeah, if you're Wood, I think you just have to be patient and do the exact same thing that you did the last time, which is try and stay out and maximize your pit in, like you know that you can, and try and get a gap at the next pit cycle. Because right now, there's no sense in fighting too hard to maintain that lead. As long as you're in the lead pack, you're really setting yourself up for something good later on in the race.
Worth noting amongst that, James Watson came in amongst the top offs with Ryman, Gatso, Dupree. And with this restart, currently there are 25 on the lead lap. Hearing that the reason partly possibly may have been a black flag for the 99, which would have come at a critical time of the race too, to have to serve a black possibly. We'll get full confirmation situation. But for Andrew Wood, the fight continues. For Luis Gonzalez Nunez, the season of redemption compared to 2021 continues. For Rigney, the chance to battle for the lead is back on. For the driver, with the Ghost logos all over that 00. Pace car is off. Green flag waits up on the stand. Off and away we go. Owen DeMade has immediately peeled the car to the pit lane, so DeMade coming in for the fuel stop. That may be a tight window for the 82 to get this done.
Yeah, but the benefit of doing that, Justin, is as long as the pit entrance wasn't closed when he did it, it's all of the drivers on track, they're still getting up to speed, so it gives them just a few extra seconds to potentially make it out in front of these leaders, and that's going to be very important for DeMade, is if he can stay out in front of the leaders, he won't go a lap down, we get another caution, and then it's a really good call for Dakota DeMade.
Coming in this time, Wagner to the race lead goes Nunez. Nunez looking to hold on down the straightaway. Wood looking for the swap draft. Instead, Wood holds on to the lead lap. Behind them, 2, 3 wide for moments. Rod Hacker amongst those fighting hard with Chris Fowler, who tries to recover from several spots lost earlier.
Yeah, it's brought a lot of people back into this race, and we've got a lot of hungry drivers in this top 10 trying to fight out and see who's going to be fastest. But none, I think, benefited from that caution more than Chris Fowler, because he'd made that big mistake on pit lane, cost himself 8-9 seconds, and then suddenly he's right back in with a shout of this lead. He's going to be very hungry for this next stint of the race. But they're on track, Justin. You can see Dakota DeMade back out in front of your leaders, almost half a straightaway in front. So that, if we get a caution, DeMade is going to allow DeMade to go all the way around. But meanwhile, Matt Wagner waited one lap longer. He's right back where he was before this caution came out.
In the heart of the lead pack, indeed. Wagner not what the 3 car needed. Still the only driver lapped down in 24th. Swap back on for the race lead again. Wood inside, back up to the point. Behind them, 2x2 starting to shape up. Amongst those, Joe Branch trying to make things work. That's George Anzotto he's battling with in the heart of the pack. That is currently for 13th.
And this is where it sort of gets a little bit dicey, is back towards this top 15 area where you start to get a little bit more desperate to get close to the lead pack, because we've seen time and time again that the pack really starts to splinter around that 7th, 8th, 9th position. So if you're below that, you're very likely to be in sort of the second pack that will eventually form here as the run goes on. And that pack, and being in that pack, can really damage your chances as we get towards the latter half of this race.
Seen that tire fall off coming about 15 laps into the run for reference for the swap, absolutely. Nunez this time going for the swap just past the start and finish line. They make it work. And give credit to Nunez. We talked about the improvement a bit. Nunez absolutely has shot up this season in terms of his performances. 6th in the standings entering today. 2 top 5s and 5 top 10s in 9 starts, quoting back-to-back 4th place finishes.
Yeah, no driver has improved more than Luis Gonzalez Nunez this season. It's been a meteoric rise for him. As you say, 6th in the standings, something that we probably would not have thought was possible at this time last season. With some of the performances that he had, but he's really found his legs here in Lionheart, And he's showing it here today. He's doing a real good job swapping here with Andrew Wood, just keeping it nice and clean. And this is exactly the type of race Luis Gonzalez-Nunez needs here.
So important to build up momentum for races such as this, absolutely. No swap this time from Andrew Wood. The tire fall off cliff off may be starting to approach here, so keep that in mind. Time for the 14 machine to lead things forward here amongst this pack. This lead pack, 20 cars deep for reference, separated by 5.8 seconds, nearly 5.9 seconds in fact.
And they're all single file right now, just staying in line, saving fuel, and that is an important consideration to make because we were just before the pit window was really about to open there that we had those pit stops. And that means that for a lot of these drivers, particularly back in the pack, the fuel save is still potentially on. If you're Andrew Wood, if you're Luis Gonzalez-Nunez or Mike Rigney, it probably is going to be very difficult to save the fuel that you need to go those 34, 35 laps on a stint. But 33 is definitely doable for some of these drivers, particularly farther back in this leading train.
Wood trying to break up some of the draft now with a bit of the snake. 130 laps to go, this time by at the stripe. And keep in mind, amidst in this pack, we talked about Wagner shuffling into this lead group. Wagner is amongst those looking a bit more of the antsier of the pack, we'll say. Keep in mind, he's in the heart of that pack, around 10th in this line, and is amongst those who have seen a few different attempts to pass by Ron Hacker.
Yeah, and certainly for Matt Wagner, it's very important to do two things. One, to make his way slowly through this pack in order to get himself potentially back on the lead lap, but two, to make sure that he does it in a very clean and controlled way, because you do not want to insert yourself into a lead lap fight, because it can gain you a lot of respect if you can be in Wagner's position and do it cleanly, but it can also lose you a lot of respect if you affect the race of a top 10 driver in a race like this. So he's got a very fine edge to walk here as he goes forward in this race. But if there's one driver who's shown that he can drive through adversity so far this season, it's been Matt Wagner.
Absolutely. Jim Herrick you're seeing also in this grouping. Shane Coogan, though, is amongst your biggest movers. Vern Hawkins III, the next car in line behind him, in fact, is your overall biggest mover. And remember, Hawkins III was amongst those in a great position before the caution, along with Coogan. Now, they're trying to battle it out to get up to Jim Herrick for the top 10.
And as you say, Coogan, he's really shown a lot of speed here, so he's just been methodically working his way forward, and he's another one who this caution, it was sort of a mixed bag for Coogan because he was on that alternate fuel strategy. He potentially could have made it on one less stop compared to some of the other leaders, but he was also far back from that lead of Andrew Wood. It was 8 or 9 seconds when the caution flew. Now suddenly Coogan less than 3.5 seconds behind the race lead in 11th. So it definitely wasn't probably the caution that he was necessarily looking for at the time he was looking for, but at the same time, I think it really has benefited Coogan in terms of his competitiveness in this race, because he's definitely shown he has the speed to make these passes as the run goes on.
We'll say the one driver I think that helped out a lot was the boss man, Joe Argenzotto in this case, because before that caution, Andrew, he had been running on his own except for maybe one lap car for about 25 laps straight. Now, looking to keep things up for the 13th position. In fact, Joe Branch trying to find a way to get up to him.
And speaking from experience in the Lionheart IndyCar Series, Indy 500, that we saw just a little bit, or just a few weeks ago, there's nothing lonelier than driving on your own around Indianapolis, because you basically have to challenge yourself to run qualifying laps every lap in order to keep yourself interested in the race, because in my case it was closer to 120 laps on my own, but it definitely is a mentally taxing in a different way. So now that he's back in this pack, it's probably definitely re-engaged Anzaldo into this race and reignited the fire to keep going forward.
Ultimate charge at the corners hard. Speaking of drivers charging ahead and hard, Andrew Wood has broken now to 7/10 again. Nunez struggling to keep up. He's been trying, but still. Wood's been quicker even without the toe. He's been quicker down the straightaways.
And that's all down to corner speed as well, Justin, because he's able to carry just so much more speed, crucially through turns 2 and turns 4, and it allows him to maximize his speed down the straightaway. So even though he doesn't have the advantage of the draft, he's just carrying enough entry speed to the straightaways that the drivers behind him just aren't able to use the draft to really overcome the advantage that he has. And once again, we see Andrew Wood starting to break away as the run goes on.
You have to think that experience when it comes to who's on the box for Wood today might be helping a lot too. The spotter for today for Andrew Wood, Connor Harrington. One of the top drivers in IndyCar competition this season is, oh boy, heart of the pack, Coogan and company getting a really busy for the top 11, trying to shuffle around Jim Herrick for a good half a lap. Didn't work out for any of them.
Yeah, this has really slowed down this group, and Jim Herrick has sort of fallen away from the back of Ron Hacker in front of him, although he does have Matt Wagner being a little bit of a bridge there, but these guys are taking a huge amount of risks. Shane Coogan has gotten around Vern Hawkins the third, and that's one more spot for Coogan, but at the same time there was a lot of risk taking in order to make that happen, and neither of those two drivers, as we know, likes to let off the gas when the situation gets dicey. So I have a feeling that this battle is far from done.
Couple times now Hawkins the third has taken some peeks underneath Coogan, not too close to be able to try it this time. And Hawkins the third is now trying to test things out, just wiggled the wheel down the middle of the straightaway here with a big boost nearly to Coogan.
And George Anzaldo also in this fight here. Hawkins makes a small mistake coming out of one, gets really high, but now Anzaldo looking to the inside. The question is, will Anzaldo have enough momentum? And he just doesn't, but now Joe Branch is getting involved as well, and you can just see the effects of the draft and the effects of momentum. You need to make sure that the moves that you're making don't put yourself in a compromising position, particularly on corner exit, because it's so easy to just fall right back into the clutches of the driver right behind you if a move is not successful.
Vern Hawkins a third down point away from Anzaldo. Coogan still trying to find a way to crack the puzzle of passing Jim Herrick. This group has now lost ground to the rest of the leaders by 2 seconds nearly, after trying to make the pass on Herrick, who has been running 10th for what feels like the entire day.
Yeah, Herrick has been comfortable in that 10th position, and he's not willing to let it go easily, and it's cost this group a fair bit of time here. I think it would be interesting to see what would happen if Shane Coogan was able to get around Jim Herrick. Would he be able to continue his charge back towards the front to sort of pull what Tony Schowen did earlier and pull this group up forward? But it's very important, though, that if you're fighting to lead a group like this, that you have the speed to back it up and to pull your group along with you. Otherwise, all you're doing is costing your entire group time by staying out front.
See the view from the top of the back straightaway now as things sort out for the leaders. Wood has fully broken the draft. Rigney is nearly losing the draft again to Nunez. So Rigney, it seems, when he is in this spot, in third in line, Andrew, it's not been easy for the 00. Second time this race he's been third in the line, and it's fallen back like this.
Yes, and I think that clean air is playing a big part in that as well, Justin. Just with Wood and Nunez where they are, Nunez is starting to get more clean air to the front of his car, and it's allowing him to go through the corners a little bit faster, and then so it in turn is allowing him to just get out a little bit more and a little bit more on Mike Rigney as well. But meanwhile, battle for P10, Shane Coogan around Jim Herrick now.
Made it look easy into turn one. Herrick trying to figure things out. Not able to close up. In fact, losing ground with the arrow wash now in the midst of things. Vern Hawkins III trying to set things up. Nearly up the racetrack. You see Herrick losing 5 car lengths now to the back end of Shane Coogan. Gap is nearly a full second already.
And that just goes to show that Jim Herrick is just not comfortable in the draft right now. He's getting just too much arrow wash, and he's not able to deal with it effectively in terms of what he's doing with his inputs, because there are ways that you can sort of drive through arrow wash to a certain extent mitigate the harms, at least for a few laps, but it takes a lot of skill and a lot of practice to do it, and I think Jim Herrick just not quite understanding what he needs to do in order to stay close to a driver as the run goes on.
Seen behind there as well, Joe Branch trying to find a way around Enzaldo after a mistake, not able to take advantage. Back up towards the front. 1.6 seconds now the gap. Rigney has recovered a bit of the time. But still, Nunez, compared to before, is running up to 2/10 slower than Andrew Wood here. Is this the pace difference between the two, or is this the strategy for Nunez to save?
Yeah, I think for Nunez, it basically comes down to he's still getting the remnants of that aero wash from the 64 of Andrew Wood in front of him. It's just not allowing him to go through the corners as fast as he needs to, but he could also just be trying to bring Mike Rigney back into the fold here, because as we mentioned, it is very tight in terms of being able to make it. Some of these drivers might be able to stretch it, but for the amount of time that Luis Gonzalez Nunez has spent running in this relatively clean air, I just don't see him being one of the drivers that can stretch it at this point.
2 seconds back now, the gap. Coming up to 115 laps to go in this one. Of note, in the battle going on for what's now for the 11th position, Herrick and Hawkins III going back and forth. Hawkins III had completed the pass in 1 and 2. Herrick now back in that spot after the swap into turn 3.
And it's created a whole gaggle of cars behind him with Anzaldo, Branch, Gallas, and Malone all in the popcorn positions for this battle. Hawkins III back around Herrick into turn 1. It looks like they're trying the swap draft at this point, possibly there, Justin, just to see if they can stay with that 29 car, Shane Coogan. But Herrick get very wide coming out of turn 2. And that's put him into the clutches of George Anzaldo and Joe Branch.
Herrick nearly scraped the wall down the back straightaway. Anzaldo clears. Herrick trying to keep up. Joe Branch a major lift in the aero wash. So Herrick has now dropped back to 13th position. Still up for grabs in the midst of this. Hawkins III looking to break the toe again.
And it's causing a little bit of havoc here as Joe Branch tries to look underneath Jim Herrick here. I think it's just a matter of time before Herrick fades down a few more positions, because his front tires just don't seem to be gripping the way that they need to in order to stay with the draft of the car in front. And it's a real shame for Herrick, because he had such a good, strong opening stint to this race. But as this race goes on, the cream definitely starts to rise to the top, and it's definitely difficult when you have the likes of Branch and Malone behind you to keep them at bay for 200 laps.
And keep in mind, the temperatures where that cream starts to boil on top of the track surface has gone up by 9 degrees Fahrenheit. So that temperature is raising to nearly 50 degrees Celsius already. 73 degrees Fahrenheit is that air temperature. In sim time, nearly 2 p.m. It's getting extremely hot for this race. The hottest it's been all day.
Yeah, this is basically the time where the car is gonna be screaming for more grip. The tires are gonna be screaming for mercy because of how hot the track is. And it's up to these drivers to find a way to make the tires last, to give themselves a shot here. You need to sort of get through this hot portion of the day in order to get to the cooler temperatures closer to the finish. And it's all about doing so in a way that really allows you to have a shot when that time comes.
Hugo Gallas amongst those battling. We talked about him a little bit. It's been a rocky season for Hugo, we'll say. Doing a good job today, though, keeping that car clean amongst those up 7 spots so far. Remember, Hugo Gallas amongst those who started in the 20s after qualifying, 39.935, about a 10th off the pole time.
Yeah, and of course, Gallas's teammate Munoz was a part of that opening incident that we have, so he is definitely carrying the banner for his team for the rest of the day. But up front, we have Andrew Wood has just now gotten out to a massive lead over Luis Gonzalez Nunez. That's nearly 3 seconds, Justin. This is the biggest lead that we've seen anyone get all race long.
Pit window expected to open up in the next lap or so. We are on lap 29 of the stints this time. Wood not coming in. More pit stops being indicated, though, for the next grouping. Amongst those, Gary Gonzo, Will Gibson's already completed service. Mike Gibson as well coming in. See some of those drivers ducking in from the mid to backpack. Amongst those, Jim Herrick indeed. 40 is now into the lane.
And I think Jim Herrick, it's just a case of his tires were screaming for mercy, and he finally listened to them. And what this does mean, Justin, is that none of these drivers can potentially make it to that critical lap 100 window. At halfway, the drivers that make it to that point, you can say that they might be able to cut out a stop compared to these drivers here, but these drivers, there's no way that they're going to cut out a stop. But we've got more takers, including your leader, Andrew Wood.
Nunez also coming into the pit lane for scheduled service. So in they roll. Meanwhile, you look at some of the others. Chris Fowler, you mentioned, trying to recover from mistakes earlier on. Cannot afford to miss the pit box this time, Andrew. Remember, 8 seconds lost the last pit stop for the 20.
Yeah, that is a mistake you can only afford to make once, and even then it's difficult to come back from, but so far so good for Chris Fowler. Meanwhile, Mike Rigney is your leader along with Matt Taylor, but right behind him, Jim Herrick on fresh tires is out in amongst this grouping here, and it's going to be very important for Herrick to get around them. Meanwhile, Hassert and Fowler in this time by. Hassert getting in there really hot, very nervous under the brakes.
The penalty, it appears, though. Fowler into the box as well. Ron Hacker, Shane Coogan, Vern Hawkins III, and Zaldo Watson this time around. So that leaves the top 8 yet to take service, as well as the 3 of Matt Wagner. More pit stops indicated this time from 3rd on back. All of this as well. Wood has come out nearly 3 seconds still ahead of Gonzalez Nunez.
And you can see Wood is basically passing Joe Hassert on the way into turn 1, so that's a very long way that Hassert is going to be back at the end of this pit stop cycle. It's going to be very difficult without another caution or without a Wood mistake for anyone to touch him at this point.
Rigney, Taylor, Showen, Beard, Malone, John have all come in this time. We mentioned Nunez. Charging ahead, has broken away by 1.5 seconds over the 11 of Joe Hassert. Mike Rigney, mistake in the pit box, just had to roll back, worth noting. Here's the other driver amongst those yet to pit. Joe Branch, Hugo Galez. Branch zipping around the 2 of Gary Gonzo, in fact. Currently 33 laps into the stint, in fact, this time around for Joe Branch coming on in.
And that's going to be all she wrote for both Branch and Galez, and that is going to put an end to your pit cycle on lap 95. So it's going to be very difficult for any of these drivers to cut out a pit stop at this point. So we're looking at a much more straightforward pit strategy, and unless a caution comes out at an inopportune time. But for right now, at least, looks like everyone is going to be on the same pit cycle going forward.
You mentioned the mistake for Mike Rigney. That has put him up for grabs from a few drivers. Hassert has zipped on by. Now Matt Taylor ready to zip on by. Tony Showen looking hungry as well to try and make up spots. All from half a second lost in the pit lane. Hearing something's happened involving Vern Hawkins III, involving George and Zoldo in the midst of turn 1. They were side by side in the entry. Not so much by the apex. They have held on to it to keep it green, though, and Zoldo, no damage from tire-to-tire contact, sending him 3 car lanes up the track.
As we see the replay here, you can see Jim Herrick right in front of them. Hawkins chucks it down the inside. That was really a little bit naughty from Hawkins. He didn't turn down nearly enough to be that car on the inside there. And it's allowed Joe Branch the ability to come in between Hawkins and Inzaldo, and in fact has leapfrogged him through the pit cycle. So that moment from Vern Hawkins has really cost both he and Inzaldo at least 1 position there.
Meanwhile, trouble. Hugo Galez, right after service a lap ago, has had to tow the car. No caution, we stay green.
And that's one of the things about Indianapolis, is that there is a fair bit of space to the bottom of the track that means that cautions are a little bit more difficult to come by than on some other ovals. You can see the smoke hanging in the distance there from the Gallus incident there. Meanwhile, back in this battle, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th, Fowler, Rigney, Showen, and Taylor are all going at it really hard here. They're all trying to vie for who is going to be in that draft of Joe Hassert in front of them. And right now, it is Showen looking the fastest out of all of them. Here's a replay of what happened with Hugo Gallus. Just the car on the inside just drifts up just a little bit, and then unfortunately nothing that Gallus could do there, and that's going to be terminal suspension damage for Hugo Gallus. So an unfortunate end to his race, because he was looking very strong for the first portion of this race.
As that went on, Tony Showen has zipped up to 4th position. And Tony, his best run of this event, or rather of this season, we'll say, has not been a pretty one for the Speedway Series, looking to pull off and away here. Remember, he's done that a few times today.
Yeah, Tony's definitely shown that he's got the lines down for this car on this track today, and he is the one who can really pull a group back towards the cars in front, and he's certainly trying to do that with Joe Hassert right now. The question will be, will these drivers behind him be as content as some of his competitors have been to allow him to do so? Because once you're up into the top 5, you really don't want to be losing positions even at this stage of the race as we approach half distance.
Keep in mind when it comes to Showen, 3 top 5s in the midst from Atlanta, Kentucky Gateway. But last race, DNF'd at Nashville after having strong pace at that concrete oval. Coming up to halfway next time around. Now the next task, get up to Joe Hassert, who is up by 8 car lengths over this pack. Not easy to get up to in the midst of this, keep in mind, as you see Taylor try that high line.
And Joe Hassert is doing everything he can to keep Tony Showen out of that draft, including snaking down these straightaways. Luis Gonzalez-Nunez also sort of off the traditional wall line that you see here on iRacing. More of a real world line, I would say, Justin, as you see the drivers tend to be a little bit more amenable to allowing the car to sort of roll down into the middle of the track in the real world. But normally on iRacing, you're right beside that safer barrier along the front straightaway and the concrete wall. So definitely a little bit of gamesmanship going on as we tick over into the second half of this race.
Cross flags up at the stand last time by for most of these drivers at the stand now. Things settle on down or past this halfway point of the race. The thing is, you have to wonder who's going to try and plan things out differently with how things could play out, especially with some of the battles that can mix up here, with the pace differences. In some cases, the recovery drives, remember, from those who didn't get good runs in qualifying.
Absolutely, and one driver that I'm keeping an eye on right now is that 29 car, Shane Coogan. He is just about caught up to the back end of this pack. Brian Beard is about 1.2 seconds up from Shane Coogan. If Coogan can get just a little bit more here, he could put himself into this battle in this leading pack. But behind him, it's a much larger distance back to Hacker, Hawkins, Herrick, Anzaldo, and Branch. And it is worth noting that Anzaldo has gotten back around Branch as well as Vern Hawkins as well. So
that's why.
Yes.
That is tire to tire and bit maybe side pod contact for Branch with Jim Herrick. That is shuffle Branch back to 14th. Herrick is in 12th.
Yeah, so another unfortunate side-to-side contact, but somehow these drivers have been able to keep the cars pointed in a straight direction here, and that's been the story of the day. Is we've had a number of near misses here, but the skill of these drivers to keep the cars under control is really showing through as well.
And that's the thing. You need to be patient if you want to win at this track and have that composure. You don't have that composure, it's very easy to make mistakes at a track such as this, where it's such a rhythmistic track with the differences per corner, as you talked about at the top.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a track where you cannot let your blood pressure get high, because you get your adrenaline pumping and then you push the car too hard and you suddenly find yourself pushing directly into that safer barrier. So the drivers who can sort of keep themselves under control, fight through the adversity, and just keep a nice level head, they're the drivers who are going to be around come lap 190 or 200 of this race.
And the question mark will be, especially since a lot of the drivers are trying to run wheel to wheel or line to line compared to what we've seen in some races, that aero wash is a major factor. We talked about how, or if anything, what can you do to try and mitigate that a bit? Make sure you don't cook the tires like we've seen with the 00 a few times.
Yeah, the number one thing that you want to do is you want to back the corner up. So when we say back up the corner, what we mean is that you're backing off the throttle before you get into the corner, making sure that you have a nice turn in, that the car's rotating well early on in the corner, and then getting back to the gas early, and using the gas to continue to rotate the car through the corner. If you're not backing off the throttle early enough, then it's just going to continue to understeer all the way out to the wall, and it's not going to let you have the rotation you need, and it's going to kill your exit speed. Oh, Chris Fowler!
Caution is out. Fowler up into the wall. And we're under yellow once more from Speedway, Indiana.
The curse is alive and well for Chris Fowler after that one there, Justin. I'll have to see another look at that, but it seemed like that there was a fair bit of air in between his car, and I believe that might have been either Brian Beard or Matt Wagner. I'm not sure which one it was. Got underneath him into turn one, and there was a fair bit of distance between the cars, but it looks like just some air contact, unfortunately.
Fowler now 5 DNFs in the past 6 races. And this is why Wagner inside.
It was less air than it looked like it originally on my screen there on the replay. So that was just, I think, a little ill-advised. And I talked about that with Matt Wagner earlier. You really can't afford, as the lap-down car, as desperate as you are to get forward in this race, you can't afford to make desperate moves, and that was a little bit of a desperate move. You need to be alongside Fowler long before the first corner if you're Matt Wagner there, and he just, I don't think, really had enough of a wing on Fowler there into turn one, and unfortunately that just has ended Fowler's day.
Hard lick for Fowler up against the catch fence. Chris Fowler, of course, has had that paint scheme with the word cursed on the side. The curse has struck at the place where curses can come into play. But with 93 to go, pit stops likely, yes. About halfway through this fuel run, looking like just about everybody rolling in except for Wagner once more. Want a big stack up into the pit commitment cone. Nunez with a bit of a checkup, second on back.
Yeah, and that can easily happen on pit entry because you basically are at the mercy of the leader, and you're much closer to the car in front of you coming into pit lane. So it's very important that you maximize everything, but at the same time, the stack-ups can very easily happen as drivers get in. But so far, it looks like all the drivers up on their respective jacks, nice and easily here. Tony Schown with a little bit of a faster stop here. He's going to be up to third.
Looks like troubles for Hasser from the stack-up, losing several spots in the sequence here.
And that might have been a wing change there for Joe Hasser, I think.
Oh, and a bit of a stack-up as well coming out of the pit limiter for a couple others. But now, DeMade has stayed out this time. Remember, DeMade is on a different strategy after being a lap down at one point. He's that orange and black car you see on the left-hand corner of your screen. Wood, Nunez, Schown, Taylor, Rigney was the race off the pit lane. Coogan is up to one of his best positions all race, up to 8th after the pit lane.
Yeah, this was another timely caution there for Shane Coogan. He was just starting to get into the sniff of the lead draft there behind Brian Beard, and that's going to be another opportunity here for Coogan on this restart to really maximize his position. Then assuming that they stay out, we should see wave arounds for both Matt Wagner and Gary Godso here.
Jim Herrick has an issue. We mentioned there was a stack up with potentially getting off the pit limiter. Now he's struggling to get fully here, so we'll see if anything happens there. DeMade is looking like he'll peel in, giving Wood back the lead. How do you slice the strategy cake down, though, here? Because we're just outside of a 30-30-30 to the end.
Yeah, this is right in the window here to make it, so you're going to have to be careful if you're one of the leaders. If you're Andrew Wood, Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, Tony Schau, and you need to make sure that no matter what happens, you can make 30 laps on a tank. And that's right on that edge there, especially if you're the leader. So you really need to be careful about the decisions you make, how far out in front you get, and how much drafting you have to do over the course of these next 3 stints.
With the service taken by DeMade, Gibson, Mike and Will. See how things were for the 11. Remember the wing change talked about a bit? That's why.
I will say that Luis Gonzalez-Nunez got very lucky that he didn't have to have some more repairs done to his rear beam and rear pods, because that is a changeable part on the DW12. You can get your rear pods and wing all changed, but it is I believe a 20-second hold for that one. So very lucky for Luis Gonzalez-Nunez, not so much for Joe Hassert, who just sort of an innocent victim of the stack up there.
So it's Wood, Nunez, Schau, Taylor, Rigney, the top 5, followed by Beard, Coogan, Hacker, Hawkins, the third, and Zoldo. Now the top 10 for this one. 91 to go. Can anybody find a way around the Woodman? Is the question mark on so many people's minds. iRacing pace car making its way out of turn 4. 91 laps to go in the next level racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. Wood keeping them nice and honest at 73 miles per hour for the peel off of the pace car. Green flag is back out. We're racing once more from Indy. Clean start once more. Single file to start things off. Will there be a swap quickly for Nunez is the major thing with Schau closely in tow.
Yeah, this is definitely no longer just a single car at the front of the field. It is heating up quite significantly here, and Tony Schau is looking very racy in that third position. Meanwhile, I think Andrew Wood, he knows just where he is on the fuel strategy. You mentioned Connor Harrington on his box here today, Justin. That's going to be a big advantage for that 64 car, because Harrington knows very well what it means to make fuel mileage here at the Speedway.
Meanwhile, behind them, hard battling too wide with Enzono underneath Hawkins the third. Hawkins the third with a squeeze. Enzono hits him with the side pod as he pushes off the track.
More side action. Meanwhile, Gary Godso, he pitted on the on the green flag there, and he's coming out sort of in the middle of this battle here. But the action on track, Joe Branch, Trevor Malone, all over the back of Vern Hawkins the third here.
Branch looking to try and get a crack at things. Just not able to build up the speed quite yet. Draft toe locking things together with Malone up front. Nunez swapping out with Wood once again. Under 90 laps to go. Nunez trying to crack the code of figuring out how to hold off Wood here with how the swaps are going.
And meanwhile, Tony Schau just sitting there in third, doing a good job. Matt Taylor quietly up to fourth as well. Mike Rigney, again, just having a nice solid day from that front row starting position. He's P5, so we've got a number of really strong drivers just waiting in the wings here. And it's definitely interesting to see the different approaches that we have from this top 10, top 15. Some drivers being very aggressive here, others just being very, very patient.
Eagles being a bit aggressive. Hassert with that damage earlier, trying to find a way around a few others. Just did. Jeff Shion on with. Also in that mix, drivers in that line was James Watson. Up towards what we see for the replay. This is how things were tight here for a moment.
And you can see that Anzaldo just drifts up just a little bit out of turn 1, and then he tries to maximize what his turn in is and the radius for turn 2, and in doing so he gets into the side of Vern Hawkins III there. A little bit of wheel banging, not the first time that we've seen those two come together like that, and you can tell that the desperation for some of the drivers towards the back end of this leading group is starting to set in just a little bit. Meanwhile, up front we have Tony Schau, and he's under attack from Matt Taylor right now.
Yeah, we're not taking the run. See the swap up in front. Schowen holding things astern in third. See just how big of a boost Schowen can build up. If he's able to time it up just right, back up that run like we've seen here.
Yeah, it really goes to show just how much not only the lines that you take matter, but also the lines that your opponents take, because you really have to, if you're Schowen, read what's going on in front of you, figure out where the cleanest air possible is, and then maximize not just your steering input, but also your throttle input. You can see a little bit of a lift there through turn 2, having to blip down into 4th gear there for just a second. And that was all because he just got a little bit more aero wash than he was expecting through there. And it's little things like that that can really make a difference in terms of lap time, especially as the tires go away here.
Which makes the equipment you have also critical to make sure you feel every single bit of that aero wash. You don't have those senses, it gets troubling. No swap this time in turn 1, by the way.
And that's one of the things that I've been noticing as the runs have gone on. The swapping becomes less and less beneficial, and you start to see, especially when Andrew Wood gets out in front, that he really likes to stay in front, and you can see that, in fact, he's preventing Luis Gonzalez Nunez from getting runs. He's really starting to snake down these straightaways. Meanwhile, Matt Taylor making a big move on Tony Schowen. Schowen has to get out of the throttle to avoid Taylor sliding up the racetrack in front of him, put Taylor back into 3rd place, Schowen back down to P4. Meanwhile, back at the back of this lead pack, Justin, we've got some really tight action with Vern Hawkins and George Anzaldo again.
Nearly scraping a bit. We've seen in the backdrop for a moment. Still looking
Vern
trouble.
Hawkins.
Vern Hawkins inside wall. He flips up across the track. Into the heart of the second pack gets hit. Caution flag is out. And some hard hits. Will Gibson amongst those in the vicinity for the secondary hit.
Yeah, there's absolutely nothing that Will Gibson could do there, but we saw it coming, Justin, didn't we? Anzaldo and Hawkins the third. Hawkins tried to go down the inside, and he just continued to go up the track just a little bit. Anzaldo sort of pinched off his exit just a little bit, and those two came together, basically 2 cars into one, and unfortunately Hawkins by far got the worst of that one.
Joe Hasser went underneath Hawkins the third in this too. Here's a look again. And watch at Hassard as he tries to drive under it.
And then, wow, not just Hassard, but I believe that was Mike Gibson going under it as well, as Will Gibson got involved into it. Mike Gibson goes underneath the flipping car as well. So lots of calamity. And then all the things that we were talking about, fuel strategy, well, it all gets put back into the blender again. One person this does benefit, Justin, though, Matt Wagner, back on the lead lap, and crucially will be able to pit under this caution and get back on proper tires as well.
He had been on 23.5 lap full tires. Now we have to see who else selects to come on in. We've seen how big track position is, though, here today compared to a lot of the action earlier. 21 cars still on the racetrack. For reference, only 1 lap down remaining in Gary Gonzo. And that's the major thing. Will we see anybody elect to roll the dice here? We only ran about 11 laps after the pit stops.
Yeah, I suspect that you'll see a bunch of drivers come down. Crucially, the top 3 have stayed out. Schowen is coming down. That's a little bit... Oh, no, he was faking coming down pit lane. He thought better of it. But I think what you'll see is a lot of drivers towards the back end of this field definitely coming down, taking tires. Looks like Branch is definitely one of those drivers, I think, coming down. George Anzaldo, Jeff Xiong, James Watson. So you're looking at basically the top 10 have stayed out. The next 10 have come into the pits, and I like this call from the likes of Branch and Anzaldo. I think that 10 lap old tires will make a significant difference here.
That difference going to be something to watch for. 11th on back. Top 10 entirely staying out there, including Hassert, who went underneath the incident. But the timing of the caution a bit big because Nunez is now up at the front for the time being over Andrew Wood. Nunez 6 laps, Wood 73, Rigney 23 for those inside the top 5 still.
Yeah, and this is going to be an interesting restart as well, Justin, because all of these drivers on these 10, 15 lap old tires like they are right now, all the tire temperatures are going to go down under this caution, and the tires are going to come back to them for about 3 or 4 laps here. But then once they get back into that heat cycle, it's going to quickly go away from these drivers, quicker than it has at any other point in this race. So I think this is where the mistakes can potentially come in if you're one of the drivers who stayed out. So we're going to have to watch very, very carefully the action here, because I think a lot of drivers, particularly the likes of Trevor Malone, Ron Hacker, and Joe Hasser in the back half of the top 10, they're going to be very anxious to try and maximize this restart here.
And keep in mind, we talked about expecting big things for Matt Taylor, your race winner from Nashville, 3-time winner this season in the points leader. He's right in the midst of this hunt here too. What do you think Matt Taylor can do? Because one of the major things, Taylor's been the king of taking advantage of aero wash and doing well in the midst of aero wash to make passes, especially at some of the smaller tracks this year.
Yeah, I think that Matt Taylor's been running sort of a quintessential Indy 500 race right now. He's been patient. He's sort of let the race come to him, and knowing that we're probably going to have more cautions, and now that we have, he's right in the battle again. And that patience really, when you think about running an Indy 500, a lot of the drivers, both in sim and in the real world, will tell you that it's only really the last 50 laps that matter, that you really start to having to press that little bit more. And that's sort of encapsulated Matt Taylor's race so far, as he's just been doing everything possible to make sure he's in that top 5 area come these last 50 laps, and we still have 70 to go here. So I don't think it's go time for Matt Taylor yet, but I think that very quickly, once we pass that sort of lap 150 area, we're going to see what Matt Taylor is made of as this race comes to a close.
To reset your top 10, Nunez, Wood, Taylor, Shawan, Rigney, Beard, Coogan, Hacker, Malone, and Hassert. And it's been a stellar race, I will say that, with a lot of the strategy, a lot of the intrigue, a lot of the comers and goers throughout this entire run here today, Andrew.
Yeah, it absolutely has. One thing to note, George Anzaldo came in and topped off, so he went in. He came in from 11th place, now 17th. That puts Joe Branch onto the back of Joe Hassert here. So there are a lot of fast drivers in that 7 through 15 position right now.
80 laps to go. Coming up at the stripe. Nunez in control of the field this time. Waiting this time a little bit longer. Green flag waves, back off and away we go. And a good launch for Luis Gonzalez Nunez as he tries to run away from Andrew Wood, Matt Taylor, and Tony Shawan. Side by side to the heart of the pack, involving DeMade and company for 14th. Samuel Ryman quietly has been running well this race in 14th, looking to hold off the Hornet's Nest.
As we go 3 wide down the backstretch, that's Matt Wagner in the middle, George Anzaldo on the low side, and Dakota DeMade on the high side, all behind Sam Ryman there. It's very difficult to get around 3 wide here. George Anzaldo hits the apron there, gets very loose through turn 3.
Matt Wagner amongst those with deep breath moments. Up at the front though, it's Wood and Nunez getting to it. Taylor took a peek in turn 3 before. Taylor will he take a peek in turn 1, tried it, hit the curbing instead.
Yeah, that was a little bit optimistic from Taylor, and he's going to pay for it just a little bit here. He's under attack from Tony Shawan now, but the big thing here, I think, is that is Taylor sort of exploring what the limits are for later on in the race, because I don't think that the move was ever really on for Taylor there, but when it comes down to 5:10 to go, you might have to make a move like that and be very brave into turn 1. So just seeing how the car reacts now, it's an important thing to do for Taylor.
And interestingly enough, Wood is electing to not go for the swap draft here, Andrew. This time a major lift it looked like coming across the stripe. Compare that to some of the others where it's heavy battling if you're amongst those such as Shion and several others. Near contact to the wall this time, Malone in ninth spot.
Yeah, Wood is a veteran here, and he knows that it's not yet go time for the end of this race. Luis Gonzalez Nunez, he's snaking. He's showing that he doesn't really want to let Wood get by him. So based on that, I think Wood's just sort of accepting that and saying, okay, then I'll just let you lead. I'll let you burn the fuel, because even having a couple laps fuel advantage at the end of the stint, it could be very important for Andrew Wood in terms of what he can do to shorten up that final pit stop. Meanwhile, Joe Branch, now around Joe Hassert, moved Branch up into the top 10. He's been battling his way through here, and he finally reaches that top 10. The question is, can he go any further?
Snake trying to lead its way around, and Branch looking to run off and away. Hassert, -5 from the starting position. Keep in mind, after the wing change, he is in a bit of trouble here, you have to think, because the cars who are starting to pass him are those who pit under the last caution.
Yeah, absolutely. You can see just how much grip that Joe Branch has, and he's drafting up quickly on Trevor Malone here, and he should be able to get by him. One of the hardest things about trying to pass at Indianapolis is the fast way around and the shortest way around is on that low line that you see Joe Branch working now, but it's also where the car in front of you tends to run. So as the run goes on and you have less grip on those tires, you aren't able to complete the moves. But when you have fresh tires like Joe Branch does, and like the people running behind him do, you really can make that low line work and make these moves happen. So this is going to be a big advantage if Branch can keep up this momentum and keep making moves like that.
75 laps to go at the stripe. No swaps amongst your front runners still. Taylor racing a race high third. And dropping around to fifth. Brian Beard has been in this march here too throughout this entire front grouping. Been an incredible race with how things have played out strategy-wise. The question mark will be in a little bit of time here, Andrew. Who will get to kiss the bricks, get to drink that sweet milk, and get the chance to run forward? Curious of your mid-race predictions here.
Yeah, it's still very difficult to predict anyone's game at this point, but I really like what Andrew Wood is doing. I like what Matt Taylor is doing, and I like what Tony Schowen's doing. But my dark horse pick right now, Justin, is Joe Branch. Those fresh tires, I think, after several pit cycles of having those fresh tires, is really going to come into play for that 28 car.
Luis Gonzalez Nunez, your current race leader from Indianapolis Motor Speedway on iRacing. More coverage of the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7 coming up after these messages here on RaceSpot and ESTV from the virtual Speedway, Indiana.
With the Buttkicker Gamer 2, what you see and what you hear is what you feel. Buttkicker, the future is feeling.
to Respawn and ESTV's coverage of the Lionheart Speedway Series for the Next Level Racing Indy 500 here on iRacing. New race leader just moments now. Matt Taylor has sent it past Luis Gonzalez Nunez from third to take away the point coming up to the pit window.
And that was a bold move there from Matt Taylor, but it's showing that he has been sort of sandbagging just a little bit throughout the first part of the stint. It is go time for Matt Taylor. Similarly, Andrew Wood around Luis Gonzalez Nunez now. I think that both of them are sensing that now is go time, and they are ready to start taking this. It'll be interesting to see after that shot fired from Matt Taylor, who else starts to go and really starts to press the issue here.
Nunez has been shuffled back to third from all that. Taylor right now with an advantage of about 5 car lengths. Last time by, Matt Taylor about 0.8 of a second quicker than the 14. So everybody now looking to go on full charge ahead, approaching those pit stops.
And here comes Matt Rigney on Tony Schau, and they're going side by side through turn 3 and turn 4 here. Schau not letting Rigney have this easily, but at the same time, Rigney's not giving up until he does finally slot back in, but that's cost them a little bit of time here to that leading trio. Meanwhile, Shane Coogan's entered himself into this chat, and all this time, Joe Branch has also worked himself right back into this top 10 mix, and he's using those fresh tires in a nice battle here with Trevor Malone.
That's just behind everything here. You see that in the backdrop. Dakota DeMatemonsto's also trying to charge ahead. Tony Schauman able to hold on nice and comfortably in that 4th spot now, being able to defend those positions. But now that's the tough thing. Trying to settle things down, knowing you've got a pit stop coming up, and knowing especially drivers like Branch are likely to cycle to the lead in a moment because they are on a different cycle than you by 10 laps again.
Yeah, this is going to be a very important time for all of the drivers in this lead draft, but I think the most important time will be for Joe Branch. What he's got to do is he's got to figure out a way to maximize the laps where these drivers are sort of filtering in one at a time into the pit stops, and he's got to find a way to use the draft and really get some good slingshots here if he wants to get himself further up into the pack, because once he gets out on his own, he's going to be running just a little bit slower than all the guys on the fresh tires, as Hassert and Xiong get very close there, and Dakota DeMate as well in that battle. That was some tight stuff there.
Xiong, keep in mind, same strategy as Branch. That's the importance of that spot, and a big buffer is built up there. Taking a buffer's nearly a full second up the road now is Wood from Nunez. Nunez is losing ground and losing it fast at the end of this tail off of the tires by 0.2 a lap.
Yeah, and if I'm Luis Gonzalez Nunez, I'm looking and considering coming in just a little bit early, trying to maximize the undercut here on fresh tires, because that car definitely does not look happy on these older tires here. And when you have the likes of Tony Schau and Mike Rigney bearing down on you, it's sometimes better to just come in early and try and get the buffer that way rather than staying out and suffering.
Going right back in the clutches of Tony Schauman, in fact, now. For comparison, you've seen it up the road. Wood is now closing. So things getting interesting. Here's the heart of the pack with Coogan. You mentioned him trying to look feisty for 5th. What can Coogan do to get back up to Rigney here?
Yeah, right now everyone's sort of in a nice long draft line right now, but that won't last very much longer, especially once people start peeling off into the pit stops. It's really going to affect who gets drafted and who doesn't, and that's where races can be made or broken at this point in time, Justin. Is you need to make sure that whatever happens, you're maximizing your draft, whether you're pitting early or pitting late. The draft is going to be so important.
Give credit to Coogan. He's been trying different strategies all race. Each time there's been the caution that's the strategy that was looking strong for him. Now, it's amongst those top runners on the equalize strategy. Amongst your front competitors. Speaking of front competitors, your race leaders, as mentioned, closing in. Now it's down to 0.3 as we get ready for the peel off of the pit window.
Yeah, we're anticipating any lap now. And here, in fact, comes Luis Gonzalez Nunez into the pits to open up the pit window. I would expect Matt Taylor and Andrew Wood to go maybe 1, maybe 2 more laps But Tony Schowen, that's going to be the real thing, is what does he do here with this relatively clean air that he now finds himself in? Will he be able to maximize some time here? And as he gets very high coming off a 2 there.
Lost him a bit of ground, in fact, with the checkup once more, but Rigney and company not able to take advantage. That train stretching all the way back to 17th, mind you. See Nunez, 10 seconds in the pit lane. Leaders coming up to 61 laps to go this time.
Yeah, not a bad pit stop there from Luis Gonzalez Nunez. You should comfortably cycle out in front of your leader, so he should stay on that leader lap. But the main thing here to watch right now for me is the gap between Wood and Schowen when each of them come down pit lane. Right now, it's just about 1.5 seconds between the two, but crucially for Schowen, he's able to carry as much momentum as possible. As we watch, that is the 0-2, I believe, of Will Gibson.
Mike Gibson.
Mike Gibson. The 0-5 of Mike Gibson getting all sorts of out of shape coming out of turn 2, and then bends the suspension on that, and then I think that will be day done for Mike Gibson.
Indeed, it is nearly a caution. There it is. Tony Schowen into the pit lane. Just running on top of the white line, too. Schowen able to get to the speed. No one else joining the 31, though. 60 to go. So now within that comfortable margin to make it 30 and 30 or less than 30 to 30.
And the interesting thing for Schowen will be, does he come out right around Luis Gonzalez Nunez again? And if he does that mean that they'll be able to swap draft? Because right now, Wood and Taylor are gapping the rest of the field, and so there's going to have to be something that happens here for the competitors to get back to this leading duo, as both of them are coming down pit lane this time by.
Hard charge for Wood to gain up on Taylor, able to get to the speed limit, both of them this time. They also bring in with the charge into the pit lane the rest of the drivers behind them, including Hacker, Malone, and Hassert. Rigney still the net leader on track, but that slow roll is going to be critical for some of the timing coming out of the box here.
Yeah, so you have Rigney, Coogan, and Beard are the drivers still out on track on that later strategy, and then we have from there on back Branch, DeMade, Xiong, Ryman, Watson, Wagner, Gonzalo, and Herrick. Oh, as Wood gets out in front of Matt Taylor there. That was a nice stop from Andrew Wood. But all those drivers that I just listed there, Justin, they're on that strategy to take that came in under that last caution. So they'll be able to go another 10 or so laps. So this is going to be very important that they maximize these 10 laps if they have any shot at getting up towards these leaders. But crucially, here it is. Wood and Taylor are out in front, and then right behind them, Tony Schowen. He is just outside of draft range, but as they get up to speed, will Schowen be able to get into this draft, or is he too far back?
Swamp draft underway. Wood was half a second quicker in the pit lane in the boxes. Taylor off and away, quickly gets by Andrew Wood. The gap is nearly 1.3, 1.4 seconds between them and the 31 car. Coogan has come in, as well as Ryman, you see in terms of the cycling on the pylon. But that swap draft really coming into play for these two at 223, 224 miles per hour.
Yeah, and it's going to be so important that they work together and keep Tony Schowen back behind them, because if they can swap maybe 3 or 4 more times, they should be able to get up into that draft of Gary Godso in front of them. Once they get to Gary Godso's draft, it should be day done for Tony Schowen in terms of at least this stint being able to get back up to him. So it was so close there for Schowen being in that leading draft, but I just don't think he's going to be able to. But here comes Mike Rigney out of the pit stop. This could change things, because he's going to come right in between Schowen and that leading duo. So Schowen and Rigney might be able to swap as well.
2 potential swap groupings. No swap this time. Now that Godso's draft is feeding draft to these 2 net potential leaders here.
Oh, and Justin, sorry about that, but Mike Rigney, he's actually lost a lap here, so I do believe Mike Rigney had a speeding penalty there.
Correct.
So that is from the top 5 position. Mike Rigney is now a lap down to your race leaders. That is basically day done for Mike Rigney in terms of being able to win this race.
Ron Hacker you can throw in the mix there too, also picked up speeding. We've seen them nearly contact the 21 car did with the 11. Here's a look at how Rigney picked up the speeding. Yep.
Yeah, just way too fast on pit in there for Mike Rigney. So unfortunate. He'd done such a good job. Great qualifying effort. And it's all for naught. He's down in 19th position, and it's going to be a tall order for him to get back into the fight. He's going to have to pray for a caution here.
Meanwhile, those who have gone to the caution dances before, we've seen the 3 of Wagner up to 4th. Still, though, as these drivers get ready to see how things cycle out here, the drivers who elected to come in during the caution, well, they're coming on in. Wagner, Gian, Watson, and Zoldo in. 4 cars yet to pit.
Yeah, so that's Branch, DeMade, Herrick, and Gibson still on track here. Of course, we saw Gibson has been in the wars a little bit today. He's 7 seconds back, but Branch is the one that intrigues me the most out of the drivers still yet to pit, because he was in that top 10 before the pit cycle started. The question is what will happen, and will he be able to do it? Oh, and we're seeing Matt Wagner with a pit stop error. That's going to cost him at least 2 or 3 seconds.
And Wagner's day has just not been the greatest from the get-go we've seen, keep in mind. But still looking at how things are playing out, Taylor and Wood still keeping it calm, and if anything, Taylor's trying to stretch it out here by a 10th. Behind them, some of the battling is on. This is currently Taylor in the lead lap for now. Hassert battling with Samuel Ryman, as well as a couple of the lap cars in the mix, as they catch up to Gary Gonso and Trevor Malone.
Yeah, and crucially for Tony Schowen, the swap, now that they've stopped swap drafting, he's fairly close to the back of Andrew Wood. He's still within that 1.5 seconds, and we've seen Schowen be able to drive up to people before. Maybe he can do that now, but looking at this battle here, this is going to be very telling for Joe Hassert what he can still do in this race, because we saw that he had that issue on pit road that's cost him time. Now if he can start to get that back with Trevor Malone right in front of him, this is going to be very important that they start to hook up and really start to move forward together here.
3 cars yet to pick. Jim Herrick coming in this time by. Let's see if Herrick's able to get by quickly off the jacks. Yes, 8.9 seconds. That leaves Branch and DeMade yet to come in, separated by 0.8 of a second from themselves on the racetrack on the pylon. Meanwhile, still the traffic handled nice and cleanly so far from these cars you see here. Right now, Taylor and Wood still up front. DeMade and Branch are now in along with Will Gibson. So this is now for the race lead between these two.
Yeah, it absolutely is. It all comes down to this for these two. They need to be hooked up here, and basically they need to make sure that they're working together for at least the next little bit in order to make sure that Schowen isn't able to do anything. Although Schowen has now dropped behind Mike Rigney, and it seems like Schowen might actually be doing a little bit of fuel saving here, because he's dropped back almost a half second behind Andrew Wood compared to where he was before.
That was going to be the next thought, is will anybody have to save here? Because remember, without draft, it was 28 to 29 laps. Most drivers made it to the window except for a couple. Schowen is a little tight. Nunez absolutely is tight. Remember, who had a 3-lap undercut to your race leaders.
Yeah, this is going to be close for a few of these drivers here. I think Schowen, you're right, strategically went behind Mike Rigney here, and he's just trying to save as much fuel as he can in order to preserve a nice podium position here at this point in the race at least. Meanwhile, of note, Joe Branch out right in front of that battle between, or right in the middle of that Hassert-Malone train along with Dakota DeMade. So some of those drivers with the undercut, they're 8th and 9th right now, so that they're looking pretty good, especially if they can continue to move forward on this run here.
Something we'll have to keep an eye on as the run continues. For reference on the pylon, 7 seconds back. The race leaders, Tony Schowen, 2.7 back, running 41-second lap times. Matt Taylor, 40.9 last time by. For reference, back to 40.2, 41.2 for Tony Schowen. Here's a look at Coogan again. And Coogan, well, he's on full charge here to catch up to these two.
Yeah, it's turned the the fuel to full rich and go for Shane Coogan, and he is really starting to catch up to the back end of Luis Gonzalez Nunez car here. The other thing to note with Nunez and Shaun is because they did come in early, their tires are going to go away faster than the cars around them. So that's going to make it even more difficult for the likes of Shaun to be able to stay in the draft of Mike Rigney and save the fuel he needs. So it is going to be a very difficult final couple of stints here for Shaun and Nunez. Battle up front, though, Taylor and Wood. Wood is just sort of stalking Taylor at this point, isn't he?
Back and forth on the interval, in fact, from about under 2/10 to under half a second. So far, it has been the balancing act, it seems. And remember, Wood's been good long run. Taylor's been someone who's been quietly stalking his prey throughout this entire race.
Yeah, absolutely. And these two have really had a mature drive today, Justin. They've at times Wood has shown a lot of speed up front, and then Matt Taylor, you could just tell with about 65, 70 to go, he just turned up the wick and finally had an answer for Andrew Wood. So just some really nice drives from both of these drivers. And the question is, will it just be decided between these two, or will we see another caution throw everything into chaos once more?
I feel like they're trying to bring a jinx in, and this is not the place you do that.
It worked once. That's all I'm saying.
To the millisecond, I believe it was. But still, there's a long way to go, and you never know when it comes to this racetrack. And keep in mind, they're about halfway to the fuel run. Nunez, meanwhile, has Coogan and Brian Beard within drafting range behind him. Coogan looking for a chance. Nunez with a big lift on the fuel save. Here comes Coogan, looking to pass them both to get up to third.
Yeah, and Shaun also with the big lift. That it is definitely very much in doubt whether either of these drivers can make it. I think Shaun has the better chance, as you mentioned, between the two, and particularly if he can spend a few laps here behind Shane Coogan. But it's definitely damage control for Tony Shaun at this point. When he just came in just that little bit too early.
Nunez sliding on back. Brian Beard, the next driver behind, also charging ahead are the drivers on the fresher tires. DeMade and Branch are coming in too to this battle. This could spell trouble for a driver trying to really lift it out. Here's DeMade. He is the first of those on the newer tires.
Yeah, DeMade is showing a lot of speed right now. He's definitely turned up the wick, and Joe Branch not far behind him. They've both gotten around Trevor Malone, so that's 7th and 8th for DeMade and Branch. And they're well within the drafting range of Brian Beard in front of them. So this is where it really pays to have those fresh tires, because you can start to do almost a leapfrog effect and really start to gain tons and tons of time through these next two stints on the fresher tires. So I think DeMade, now that he's gotten around Branch and he is the first driver on this alternate strategy, if there's one driver who I think could drive up and take it to Wood and Taylor potentially, it could just be Dakota DeMade in that number 82 car.
Well, some strong strategies in the past in this series. Can this be a magical drive? 6.8 seconds behind the race leader for reference. DeMade struggling to find a way around Beard and Nunez, though, which will be an important factor, especially with Joe Branch second on their strategy. Right on behind as well. DeMade losing ground, in fact, for the aero wash, starting to struggle.
Yeah, I think the big thing for DeMade is getting around Luis Gonzalez Nunez and Brian Beard here. And it looks like Beard is going to slip around Luis Gonzalez Nunez. So if DeMade is able to stay in Beard's draft here, he should be set up really well. But it has brought Joe Branch back onto the back of Dakota DeMade as well. Meanwhile, another driver to look at in this top 10 that we haven't talked about much today, Sam Ryman, just quietly has inched his way forward, now running 9th.
Right behind this battle, close squeeze. Nunez holds on. DeMade avoids contact. Joe Branch tries the high side, going for the cross. Can't get the run quite yet.
Yeah, that was nearly a brave move there from Joe Branch, but he thought better of it. Now these drivers should get around Luis Gonzalez Nunez through turn 3 here. And Dakota DeMay does, but Luis Gonzalez-Nunez with the tight turn in doesn't allow Branch through this time by, but should be able to get around him on the front stretch. But here comes Sam Ryman, that black and yellow number 59 car. He's really started to turn up the wick here, putting in some really solid lap times, some 41.1, same as the leader.
Team just in the backdrop there for the moment. But Branch trying to find a way around to get to 7th. Nunez continuing hard, saving, and continuing to struggle with the tire wear. Already approaching within the next 10 laps or so from the pit stops to close things on out for this race. No pass yet from Branch. That allows Ryman to help close.
And it's so important for Branch that he gets around Luis Gonzalez-Nunez soon here, because he can't afford to lose too much time to the cars in front, particularly Dakota DeMay, who has taken over the lead of this alternate strategy that they're both on. So I have a feeling that Branch will be getting a little bit more desperate here as the run goes on, but we're actually fast approaching for some of these drivers. Within the next 10 laps, we'll see whether these drivers can make it on fuel or not. And the first driver I think we're going to have to worry about is Luis Gonzalez-Nunez.
Especially if that 14 can make it to the end after the undercut strategy from the playbooks showcased earlier. Still in the midst of things, though. Right now, 17 cars in the lead lap with how things have played out. Still Branch looking for a way to back it up a bit here, and that's the tough thing. Notice this a few times, Andrew. Is it better to back up these corners again with the aero wash, try and get a launch better off, and get that draft effect down the straightaway instead? How do you do it, though?
Yeah, the issue for Branch right now is he's just in a line of about 5 cars, and once you get to be the 3rd or 4th or 5th car in line, it's just almost impossible to find the clean air necessary to get the good run, particularly if the car in front of you is going at the same speed and not lifting like Luis Gonzalez-Nunez was before. It's much easier if you're Andrew Wood, who we're seeing on screen right now. It's much easier for him to stay right up close with Matt Taylor and potentially get that leapfrog or the right run. But the way you do it is still the same. It's still backing up that corner, making sure that your car gets through the center better than your opponent, and then getting back to the throttle as early as possible.
Still 4/10 between them, a bit of close racing. Tony Schowen getting shuffled back by DeMay. That's the battle for 5th. Here passed them by previously. So the fresher tires are now looking to find a way around to 4th place possibly.
And here's the interesting thing is we know that Schowen and Branch are teammates, so will Schowen maybe run some favorable lines to Branch to help him out with Luis Gonzalez-Nunez here? Doesn't look like it has happened so far, but that could be a factor here to try and get Branch around both of these drivers here.
It's a bit of a buffer, but there is a run for Branch. Nunez trying to avoid the boxing effect. Runs up to the 3rd line. Branch backs it down to the edge of the 1st line.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised that the 2 power slide drivers aren't working as much together here. I know that they're in the same Discord, so it does surprise me that they're not really working here, because it is allowing Dakota DeMay to really escape from Joe Branch, and that's who they're fighting with for the most part. Meanwhile, Matt Wagner has gotten around Trevor Malone. He is knocking on the door of the top 10 right now, Justin.
Wagner, remember, had to come back from recoveries from positions. Wood able to gain up a position to the race lead. Through the short chute in 3 and 4, Andrew Wood looks to set sail, entering the pit window, 35 laps to go.
And that, I think, is just showing Matt Taylor that as long as there's in the draft, don't count out Andrew Wood from this race, no matter how late that they get in this in. You can just see how much more Matt Taylor's car struggled in that draft there. I don't think he was expecting quite that much aero wash, and that's cost him a good 0.4 of a second. Meanwhile, worth noting that Branch has gotten around both Schowen and Nunez, so that's Branch up to 6th, DeMay in 5th for that alternate strategy.
Side by sides, meanwhile, continuing to become a trend. This is around 12th it was for a moment. James Watson, again trying another poke though. Another dive underneath Hassert. Watson trying to run the bottom. The dirt specialist clears with a close battle with Hassert.
And that was a really tricky move there from James Watson. He really had to make sure that he got clear of Joe Hassert, and he did. But Joe Hassert fighting back here, we know that Hassert won't go quietly, and he makes the move back into turn 1.
Quick slipstream on back indeed. This is the next grouping behind Wagner for reference. Pit marks approaching. Wood has already broken away by half a second and growing per corner exit over Taylor.
And I think part of that, Justin, is that Matt Taylor does want to stay behind Andrew Wood, because while he should probably be good on fuel, he'll know that Andrew Wood has been just saving as he was staying behind Matt Taylor there. So I think that that's going to translate to at least a 1 lap, if not a 2 lap advantage for Andrew Wood on this final stop. And that will translate into several gallons of fuel. Meanwhile, another thing to note is Shane Coogan has cut into the gap between himself and Wood and Taylor. So Coogan just quietly starting to close. I don't know that he's got enough time to get there at this point, but he is still in this fight.
Expecting pit stops coming up here. DeMade battling for 4th with Brian Beard. The pack behind him, expect the peel-off. There it is for Nunez. Nunez, 32 laps to go. Can Nunez make it is a huge question, compared to those who can absolutely make it, like DeMade, like Branch at this point.
Yeah, it's going to be really tight for Luis Gonzalez Nunez. I believe that was a 30-lap stint for the 14 car, so he's got 32 to go. He's going to have to find a way to go 2 laps further than what he did that lap. I'm not sure that it's worth it for Luis Gonzalez Nunez at this point. The good thing is that Shawn still on track right now. He might just have enough fuel to make it.
That's the next pack behind these cars you're keeping an eye on. 8 seconds back the leaders. They are not gaining enough ground here compared to what we've seen before, though. The equalizing point seems to have broken in, with Brian Beard being the train's conductor at this point.
Yeah, the problem is that Brian Beard is on that, we'll call it the normal strategy, and he's got the old tires, so any advantage that they have by running in clean air on their own, it's getting nullified by the fact that Brian Beard is the one leading the strain and not DeMade or Branch.
And this is the battle for 4th.
Oh, and Taylor's in.
Taylor is in, 30 to go this time. Wood able to stretch it forward, and as you talked about with the saving from Wood, Wood able to go further and go for the overcut.
And this is huge for Matt Taylor to come in this lap. The fact that he couldn't go another lap, that puts him in the territory of having to save on this final stint. Meanwhile, Andrew Wood, by going that 1 lap longer, it's just going to allow him to go full rich here. This could be the move that wins Andrew Wood the race. By staying behind Taylor and by going that 1 extra lap, he'll just be able to keep the car at full rich that much longer.
The pit lane goes Andrew Wood, bringing Shane Coogan with them. Slow roll for Wood now underway. Taylor has already made his way out of the pit lane, coming out of turn 2, in fact, down the back straightaway. How will this play out for the race lead? Remember, Wood able to get a lighter car now with the fuel into the box.
Yeah, this is what it all comes down to, this race right here. Matt Taylor versus Andrew Wood. Wood got into his box really nice there. He's rolling well. The question is, how close will he be? Matt Taylor's getting potentially a draft here from the lapped car of Gary Godso, so that might be a small advantage for Matt Taylor. But the thing is, I don't think that Taylor can even afford to lead, even if he's right by Andrew Wood. The thing is, he needs to be close enough to be in the draft in order to make it.
Oh, and Wood's got him by a sizable margin. How about 15 car lengths nearly, with Godso still as the buffer car? The gap between them, more than a second, nearly 2 seconds in fact. Between them with Wood, looking to pull off and away, 28 to go. And now it gets interesting with those trying to stretch it further than these drivers.
Oh, and that is just disastrous for Matt Taylor, because he's going to get around the lap car Gary Godso very quickly, and he's going to find himself all on his own. It's going to be hard pressed for him to be able to make it all the way to where he needs to on this fuel run.
Speaking of fuel runs,
we have DeMade and Branch coming in, as well as Sam Ryman off of that alternate strategy. So they are coming in sort of at the early end of the window that we were thinking that they would come down here, but they are going to be full fuel, full rich all the way to the end. The leaders, I think, still will have to save just a little bit here.
Will there be quicker stops here? 9 seconds for DeMade. 8.5 for Branch, not enough to pass the 82 though. Ryman a 9.6 second stop. Wood zips on by easily by a sizable few seconds before they even make the commitment call.
Yeah, but I think the key for DeMade and Branch right now is where they cycle in regards to Brian Beard and Shane Coogan. If they can get close enough to Coogan, maybe work together to keep going forward, then that will be really positive for the race, because again, they can just go full rich to the end here. I don't know that Beard and Coogan and Taylor and Wood really can at this point.
Wagner 9.3 second stop, by the way, 9.0 should say, for the 3 car. And Zodo and Heitson, the only drivers not yet to pit in this race. DeMade trying to get the snake is up to what could be for 4th position. D now is for net 4th position, zipping on by. Brian Beard zipping on by Joe Branch, meanwhile.
And I think Beard and Branch need to work together here to get back onto the back of Dakota DeMade, because DeMade is doing a lot of weaving here. If Beard can drag these two up towards that, then you can really start to get some good draft effects going on. But the question is, with 25 to go, do any of these drivers really want to work with each other at all at this point?
Final pit stops are complete. Wood now the race leader by almost 3 seconds. Look at your biggest movers. Up 22 spots, Shane Coogan. Munch your biggest. Joe Branch is your biggest. Up 23 spots with a pass back on Brian Beard.
And the save is on for that 8 car of Matt Taylor. He is definitely fuel saving at this point. And he is falling quickly into the grasp of Shane Coogan, and then Dakota DeMade and Joe Branch, they're another 3 seconds back. So the question right now for me is, how far is Matt Taylor going to fall? And will Andrew Wood be able to hold on to this lead at this point? And then, of course, there's always a factor that a caution changes everything.
Oh, big check there. That was with Gary Gonzo trying to get around the traffic. No damage, though, to those drivers who were just in the midst of that battle, but it did cause a bit of a checkup. Here's a look at the battle on behind in the next pack. Munsto's Tony Showen, who has really dropped back after the pit cycle. A 10-second stop for the 31 sees Tony Showen looking to hold on to the top 10. Hyson, though, wants to rip it away. Back up to 10. Goes the 18 car.
Yeah, and that's certainly Tony Showen putting in as much fuel as possible, as Wagner and Nunez get very, very close. And then you talk about recovery drives. Matt Wagner, from a lap down early on in this race, suddenly finds himself knocking on the door of the top 8 here.
Nunez now under attack. A little squeeze. Once again, Matt Wagner trying to get that spot sorted together. Just can't get the crack code once again. Tries to regroup it. Gets the draft with Nunez saving down the straightaway. Hudson joining the fun as well. Goes underneath. Nunez trying to hold on to one spot. Does for now for 9.
Luis Gonzalez Nunez is trying to do the almost impossible here. He's got to go 32 laps on this stint. And I just don't think that he's going to be able to do it. So right now he's just battling for all he's worth, hoping for a caution that will save his race here. But it's going to be, I think, very, very quickly going to fall away from the number 14 car, which is unfortunate because he'd shown a lot of speed all day and some really mature driving. So I think it's going to be an unfortunate result that doesn't really reflect how good he was running today.
18 laps led earlier today for Nunez. Hudson looking a bit impatient, though. Jeff has to be smart here, you'd have to think, Andrew. That's nearly 2 times with contact.
Yeah, the problem is, though, Justin, you don't have much more time to be smart at this stage of the race. You have 21 laps to go, and if you're a Haisong, you're just trying to do everything that you can to get into that top 10 because you're on that more sort of alternate strategy. You have fresher tires, you have lower fuel. You need to take advantage of it while you can. So it's a very difficult balancing act, and I think that pretty soon you're going to see Haisong make more and more aggressive moves here as he tries to look into turn 3 once again.
Their peak right there. 20 to go, meanwhile, for Andrew Wood. As Wood continues to stretch it out, he can go flat out from here, remember. Last time by, 4/10 quicker nearly than Matt Taylor. Wood is on it to grow this gap.
Yeah, confirmed by Jason Brophy, Andrew Wood's teammate. Andrew Wood is full rich to the end, and Matt Taylor, you can clearly see, is not. Shane Coogan quickly closing in on that number 8 car, and I actually think if I'm Matt Taylor at this point, with Coogan only 7/10 of a second behind, I would just let Coogan get by, draft for as much as I possibly can, and then maybe I'll save enough to be able to fight at the end.
I will say this for Coogan. What a drive for the 29 yet again. Coogan does it again with this drive. We've seen this at Michigan. We've seen this a couple other times from the rookie. Coogan with a chance to go up 23 spots after a rough qualifying. One of the final drivers on time. And Coogan charges ahead. Meanwhile, behind them, Haisong has charged on by the 14 of Nunez.
Yeah, and that was really important for Haisong to get by Luis Gonzalez Nunez there, because he couldn't afford to let Matt Wagner get too far in front. If he did, he risked losing the draft. As it is, he should be able to draft back up onto the back of that 3 car. And along with Sam Ryman, they can set sail after the 5 car of Brian Beard. This is still far from decided, the order that we're finishing in this top 10 here, as Coogan has now passed Matt Taylor for second.
That is indeed confirmed with Coogan, 4.6 seconds back. And keep in mind, the only driver matching, if not quicker than Wood's times, has been Coogan this race.
Yeah, last lap there was just 0.04 of a second between Wood and Coogan, slightly in the favor of Andrew Wood, but it's definitely Coogan is the only one who could potentially ruin Andrew Wood's party. But even at this point, I think you need a caution if you're anyone other than Andrew Wood. If you're Andrew Wood, you're just hoping that it goes green at the end here.
And to stay green. My son trying to focus things, though, to get up to Matt Wagner, who's up that 25 spots gained in this race. Still a bit of a sizable margin of 4/10 to close up, and it's been a quiet race for the 18. It's a different look with the purple and black tonight. Jeff has done this a couple times where he sneaked into the edges of the top 10 this season.
Yeah, different look, different mentality from Jeff Haisong tonight. He's really done a good job mastering this sort of long strategy game that's required at the Indy 500, where other people have made some strategy mistakes here and there. He picked the right strategy, and it's showing in his results here, at least so far. With 15 or 16 laps to go, he is running 9th, and it's been a really good day for the 18 car.
Have to think it might be a big day for team points too when you think about things. If you look at the back wing, the banner says Dark Horse. Dark Horse has had some stellar recoveries to get themselves potentially to keep up with Raceverse in the midst of that team fight.
Yeah, absolutely they have, and as well as with Power Slide, Branch is in 5th, but Shallon's in 11th, and Goodman out in 26th. So that's going to be a big day for Dark Horse to catch the leading duo of Raceverse and Power Slide.
Indeed. Taking a look, in fact, at Shawan. Still trying to sort things together in 11th position. And it's the question mark of what happened to Tony this run. He has now just about lost the draft to Nunez, in fact. He's running slower times than the 14 car.
Yeah, well, I think Luis Gonzalez Nunez has all but given up on that fuel save strategy, whereas Tony Shawan, he's still right on the cusp of making it. You saw he came down basically on the same lap as Matt Taylor did, so that tells me that both of them are just very, very close to making it. You've seen how far Taylor has dropped off this run as well. Shawan, if the problem for Shawan is that the more he gets out of the draft, the more fuel he's going to use, so it's almost better for him to be close to the car in front of him rather than further away.
He is catching up, keep in mind now this lap, to Nunez, so that is something to factor in a little bit here. We're now coming up to 13, make it 12 laps to go in the upcoming time around for your race leaders. So nice and calm is the focus point here. This is the calm before those final critical 25 miles. What is going through your mind as a driver if you're, say, Andrew Wood, who is now leading by almost 5 seconds, coming up now to 12 to go?
If I'm Andrew Wood, I'm thinking no cautions, no cautions, no cautions, no cautions, no cautions. That's all there is to it for Andrew Wood. He has a stranglehold on this race. He just needs to continue to do exactly what he's doing and just hope and pray that no one else makes a mistake. Otherwise, he is set up for the victory here.
And what could have been for a few of the drivers, keep in mind. We mentioned, of course, Nunez in that conversation, Matt Taylor in the conversation. But talk about those who never quit. Samuel Ryman, one of the drivers who did not set a time in qualifying, 7th position. This is exactly what he's done throughout much of the season, but this is very impressive. The 22 spots, essentially from the very back of the field, 29th starting slot to get here.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's not done yet. I think he's closing right in on the back of Brian Beard here, and Brian Beard is another driver very close on that fuel number. I think he's on the same number as Andrew Wood, so he should be good in theory, but the fresher tires and the lower fuel that Sam Ryman will have here, it's going to pay a benefit, and I think that there's a shot at the very least at 6th here for Ryman.
10 laps to go this time. He has 25 miles to try and sort out to catch up to the 5 after being patient all race. 2 laps the tire difference between him and Brian Beard for that 6th position. It's about 11 seconds back to the race leader. Meanwhile, DeMade getting around for 3rd in the midst of some of the traffic. So DeMade up to a podium spot, nearly drifting up in the arrow wash of Mike Rigney.
Yeah, and it's been such a solid drive from Dakota DeMade. He's another driver who tends to be a little bit, I'll call it a little bit excitable, Justin, and can sometimes put himself in bad positions. But here today, he's done an amazing job of just staying with the strategy and really making the moves count when necessary.
And keep in mind, he's amongst those who rolled the dice on the different strategy. He's utilized that to near perfection to get himself up here, charged up from the edges of the top 10 to the top 5 before the last pit stops. For Matt Taylor, though, the saving continues. For the Graphics MadWorks machine, the points leader coming in. Still a strong day for Matt Taylor.
It absolutely is, but the slide might not be over because Joe Branch, who's on the same strategy as Dakota DeMade, is quickly bearing down on that number 8 car. And don't forget that Branch is in that title fight as well. So this could be a fairly important move for the 28 car to get done here. It will be at least a 6 or 7 point swing here by him making this move, which he does in a turn 1.
Gonna make it by quickly. It's still a net gain, though, over Matt Wagner, who's been in full recovery mode since, well, the drop of the grid.
Yes, it is, but it could have been so much worse for Matt Wagner. First missing the start, then with all the issues in terms of getting his lap back and then giving it back, and then, of course, the contact with Chris Fowler as well. So Wagner has had a very eventful race to end up in 8th position. Meanwhile, Matt Taylor, much quieter here at the front, and he's looking at a top 5, at least right now. But Brian Beard and Sam Ryman are quickly closing on him as well. So you can't, if you're Matt Taylor, let this slip too far out of your control here.
And you mentioned the recovery part for Wagner. You have to wonder what could have been for Wagner because he didn't get the chance to put in a qualifying spot, was one of the better drivers in practices. He was expected to be one of the contenders even for this race, as long as he started off strong. And the tough thing on that of missing the start is, that's the opposite of starting strong. That's basically starting off from a walk.
Yeah, absolutely. Not just a walk, but a walk in a 3-legged race, and you only have 2 legs. He was on the back foot from the drop of this green flag, unfortunately for him, but it's been definitely the type of drive that you need if you're going to contest with the championship. You need to turn lemons into lemonade, and that's what Wagner has done. As Trevor Malone getting very close in his battle with James Watson here, very close to the outside wall. And Wood, he's a sigh of relief as he didn't get closer.
Down to the final 5 laps, approaching the point of return already in this one. Watson, keep in mind, we've talked about him a fair bit today. In fact, it's been his best race in the series. This is potentially in line for his best career finish. That will get even better. Nunez is in the pit lane. Nunez can't make it.
We suspected that Nunez wouldn't be able to make it, and it has definitely come to fruition here. Unfortunately for Luis Gonzalez Nunez, as I said before, because he really did run a strong race. It's just that you have to be on top of your fuel numbers from basically the drop of the green flag and knowing what you have to do to make it from any given stop. And it's just so important to keep that in the back of your mind throughout the whole race, and it just turns sour for Luis Gonzalez Nunez in these final 5 laps.
Next time around, Andrew Wood can clinch things for the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7 for the point of no return. And what a run for the series rookie. More than half the race led, looking to lead the end of lap 197 to secure the point of no return. And ever since Wood has found his way to the front, it's been unstoppable pace. Long run from the 64. 3 to go from the Brickyard.
And the thing about Andrew Wood's drive is that not only has he been foot to the floor in terms of pace, but he's managed to make the fuel numbers work. And that is so tricky to do, that finding that balance between outright speed and knowing when to push it and when to save. And he did that exquisitely when he used Matt Taylor to make sure that he had enough fuel to go full out on this final stint. Meanwhile, Taylor is falling even further as Brian Beard is now around him, and quickly that's Sam Ryman and Matt Wagner right behind him as well. So he is quickly falling into the clutches of his title rival here, Justin.
That is absolutely huge when it comes to Wagner. A potential swing to the points if things play out the right way over the next lap and a half. 2 laps for these drivers. Will Ryman get the chance to go for a spot here? Trying it. Ryman's trying it. Ryman gets it. Move Taylor back to 7th. Wagner now 7 car lengths back.
Wow, and what a turn of events for Matt Taylor. Having to save this fuel on this final stint has just been crushing for him. He done such a good race for most of the day, but just again, that small amount of saving that didn't happen on the last stint, that's all it took there.
Final time around for Andrew Wood for this year's running to the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7. Andrew Wood has been outright dominant today. 104 of the 199 complete, led for the 64. But today, this victory will be all so sweet. A driver who has been lightning fast on the long run. Andrew Wood picks up a 2nd career victory, but it's a huge victory at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Andrew Wood wins the Next Level Racing Indy 500 presented by SimRace 24/7.
What a run by Andrew Wood there. He did absolutely everything perfectly in that race. Didn't put a wheel wrong, used the strategy perfectly, and proved that not only did he have great strategy, but he was also the fastest driver on track today. A truly worthy Indy 500 champion and a truly great drive from Andrew Wood.
And all the work put in by that team, all the work put in by his crew members. Connor Harrington the first half, Bill Kraus the second half. A huge victory for the 64 camp here today. And a big thing for the points, look at 7th and 8th. Wagner passed Taylor on the final lap.
And that's just crushing for Matt Taylor there after he had such a strong drive throughout most of the day. There's speculation that he may have had damage because He just fell so far over that last final stint, and that could be the case, but we won't know here today. But all we know is that Andrew Wood put together the perfect race here, Justin, and is a fitting 500 champion.
I think Andrew Wood may have ran out of gas. He is coasting into the pit lane instead of doing the burnouts. He immediately wants to drink them out. He wants to go straight to Gasoline Alley. Let's go straight to your unofficial race results in what was a barn burner and what was a dominating day for Andrew Wood. The Synergy Motorsports Black Machine wins by 7.9 seconds over Team Race for Sunset's Shane Coogan. Dakota DeMade comes through the pack from 20th to 3rd to round out the top 3, while Joe Branch goes 28th to 4th for a top 5 with Brian Beard. Samuel Ryman never quit all race long. He finishes 6th, with Matt Wagner edging Matt Taylor in the final moments for 7th. Hyson and Shawan, your top 10. 11th spot went to James Watson with Trevor Malone in the 12th position. George Anzotto and Jim Herrick, the top 14. Will Gibson, the last driver of the lead lap, while those who were lapped down include Nunez, Rigney, and Hacker. Joe Hassert did not make it to the checker flag, had to pit with 2 laps to go. 2 laps down is where the 11 finishes. Gary Gonso also never quit, finished 20th. Mike Gibson, Vern Hawkins the 3rd, Chris Fowler 21st through 23rd amongst the DNFs, with Isaiah Dupree in 24th. Hugo Gallez in 25th. Michael Goodman led laps early, instead finished in 26th to end it. Brandon Carter, Scott Rankin, Paul Jenkins, Craig Forsyth, the top 30. 31st spot today goes to Gonzalo Munoz with Christian Jasper, the final driver. Today's starting grid, 32 entrants. Fastest lap, Shane Coogan on lap 10. That's a look top to bottom for today's running order, brought to you by SimRace 24/7, as that brings us into our post-race coverage, brought to you by HyperX. Powered by HyperX's Lionheart Racing Series, makers of premier gaming gear like the luxury ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. Let's head straight to HyperX Victory Lane, where it is the Woodman, Andrew Wood, who dominates at the Brickyard. He gets to kiss the bricks with a dominating run by almost 8 seconds. Andrew, how does it feel to be a winner here at Indy?
Man, I can't even begin to put into words right now how it feels. Really, like, I can't ever finish these races, and I never had a thought at all going into this that I had a chance to win an Indy 500. My best finish in any Indy 500 before this has been 11th. So my first top 10 Indy 500 is a win, and it's crazy. It's been a really, really rough season. I've had a lot of bad luck, a lot of drama early on in the season, and I really just needed to put a good race together. So I came into this really just wanting to kind of cruise and play around with every single strategy possible, and I guess I picked the right one.
You had lightning quick pace as well, though, on the long run. What was that like, knowing how quick you were and how well you hit the fuel marks with your teammates and your crew members, should say, up in the box?
Yeah, during the practice race last night, I kind of picked up on a couple of things that people were doing that I don't necessarily do, and I wasn't really sure if they were actually beneficial to me or not until I got into the race today, and a couple of those things I'm like, all right. I did a lot of practice racing, kind of around people, trying to judge what the draft was like, when I can make moves, when it was clean, all things that I've done wrong in the past in previous Indy 500s that have just put me on the back foot. So yeah, when I realized that my pace was just substantial over Luis, and that after that second caution, I knew that I had the opportunity to run up front if I just drove a little bit better than the guys that I was chasing.
Well, it's Andrew Wood, your race winner here at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. What a run when it comes to Andrew Wood in the pace today. Shane Coogan was on it as well. Shane, second spot today, all the way from 25th. What was that charge for the pack like to get yourself to the top 3?
Yeah, thanks, guys. What can I say? It was a good race. It was a really satisfying drive out there. I just tried to be patient. tried to kind of let the race come to me early, and pretty tired right now. That's what I can tell you. But man, I had a blast out there, and I really wanted to win this race. You guys could probably see, but I gave it my best. I think starting 25th was made a tough day for us. Kind of wish I could have started up a little bit closer to the point there, but to make it to second, it really feels good. It's still a little bitter not being able to reel in just one more car, but congrats to Andrew there. He drove a great race and deserving winner for sure.
At one point, you did close in a fair bit of time. Talk us through the different strategies, though, you had to utilize throughout the race, because it seemed you were the first of the different strategy takers each caution period that seen a split in strategy.
Yeah, you had to try to get creative. You know, it's a long race, 500 miles. So my goal was starting far back, was to try to get in the top 10 by the halfway point. So, starting out in the race, a lot of traffic, a lot going on, but just trying to manage the track, manage the temperature, and just kind of wait for some mistakes, and managed to make some good moves early in the race, and played the strategy game a little bit. Tried an overcut one time, tried an undercut the other. So ended up, getting in that top 10 by the halfway point. And from there, it was just exponentially easier with the aero wash to try to, keep that track position. But at the same time, the track was getting hotter. And once you get in like that top 8, top 7, it gets so competitive that it might take an entire stint to make a move around somebody. So extremely challenging. And I think in the last half of the race, the last 60 laps, things started to change up quite a bit, but tried to have good clean stops, and once we were in kind of that top 5, top 4 towards the end of the race, I knew we had a shot.
Well, congratulations once again on the second place run, Shane. Third spot today ends up going the direction of Dakota DeMade, and you had to charge the pack as well on fresher tires at the end. Talk us through your run today.
This is absolutely insane. I feel so lucky right now. I didn't pick up fuel on the first stint, on the first pit stop, and I was 15 seconds away from going 2 laps down, and to come away with the podium, I feel so lucky I was able to just hang in there and get away with it. Yeah, it was a hectic race just to charge through the whole field. I gotta give a special shout out to Craig Forsyth. He was involved in an early wreck, but he stuck around and acted as our crew chief spotter and really helped us out and get to the end on that strategy. So, big shout out to Craig. And 4D Racewear, Jim was able to send me some gloves, and they felt super comfortable, and I was able to just hang on for 2.5, 3 hours and get to that podium. And of course, shout out to the Team Race First crew. And you guys can also check out Echo Blade on Steam. That is a game that is solely developed by me. So sorry, I had to get all those sponsors out of the way because I missed it during my first podium interview, and my Race First crew just absolutely roasted me. So
congratulations on the run, Dakota.
Yeah.
That's Dakota DeMade, rounding out the top 3. I'd like to thank him, Shane Coogan, Andrew Wood for taking the time to speak with us. And Andrew, what an addition to this one. Kinsella should reference there. What a run by Andrew Wood. What a race here at iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Yeah, congratulations to Andrew Wood. He's one of the true gentlemen of the IndyCar community on iRacing, not just in the Lionheart series, but in the whole IndyCar community. So great to see him succeed here today at the Indy 500 and bring home one. As he said, you could tell just how much it meant to him. And then all of the drivers really did a great job finishing this race. It was a battle that you saw out on track, and truly the people who survived were the ones who really understood what the test was here today. And now it's time for all of these drivers to breathe, and they have a nice month off before a busy August gets started to get the second half of the season underway.
And of course, that starts off with a run at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. That taking place to start off the month of August the 1st, 10:05 p.m. Eastern Time, 7:05 p.m. Pacific. Once again, be sure to tune in for 175 laps of racing at what should be a magical race at that mile facility. But with that, it's time to say goodbye. I'd like to first thank the presenting sponsors for this series, starting off today with Racing. Moza Racing is revolutionizing sim racing with the development of industry-leading hardware and software products like their R9 direct drive wheelbase and GS steering wheel. Featuring zero-delay wireless technology and made from high-end materials, Motor Racing delivers the precision you need to reach victory lane. The Lionheart Racing Series is powered by HyperX, makers of premier gaming gear like the legendary ultra-comfortable Cloud line of gaming headsets. Whatever you play, however you play, HyperX knows we're all gamers. For more information on HyperX products, visit hyperx.com. You're passionate about sim racing, but it always feels a little flat compared to the feeling of driving a real car. Now you can actually feel what it's like to drive a race car. Buttkicker haptic hardware and software are easy to install and let you feel every bump in the track, slip of your tire, and engine redline. Tactile feedback is so accurate and realistic, you'll be driving better and having more fun than ever before. Next Level Racing is an industry-leading cockpit and motion simulator manufacturer devoted to creating the most immersive experience possible for the global sim racing community. Take your racing to the next level and visit www.nextlevelracing.com. Gomez Sim Industries are makers of high-end esports equipment and controls, precision-built using nothing but the best materials available today. Passion and handmade craftsmanship drive each made-to-order build, creating a driving experience like no other. Visit GomezSimIndustries.com. And it's not just those 5 names, but so many more and all the partners at the Lionheart Racing Series that help things turn such as today. To learn more about them, visit LionheartRacingSeries.com. You can also find out more information on the 3 competitions the Lionheart sanctioning body runs. But with that, it's time to say goodbye. As mentioned, the next time out for the Speedway Series will be at New Hampshire Motor Speedway August the 1st. Be sure to tune in then. But with that, I'd like to thank you for tuning in for this week's action here from iRacing's virtual Indianapolis Motor Speedway. For our producer, Arjuna Kankipani, for my co-announcer, and Andrew Kinsella, I'm Justin Prince saying so long, enjoy the rest of your evening. Congratulations to the Woodman, Andrew Wood, your winner from the Brickyard.